What if a 4-year-old beat Elon Musk, live on air? That question echoed across every screen, from living rooms in suburban Ohio to packed cafes in New York City. The world paused for a moment, not out of disbelief, but pure curiosity. Was this clickbait? A media stunt? Or something real? What followed wasn't just a viral moment. It was history in the making. September 14, 10:32 a.m. Silicon Valley. A massive countdown ticked down on the LED screen behind the stage, 19 seconds. 18 seconds, the energy in the room was electric. Hundreds of the brightest engineers, journalists, and venture capitalists leaned forward, eyes locked on two seats. One was filled by Elon Musk himself, black turtleneck, calm yet twitchy fingers. The other? A booster seat with a small boy in dinosaur pajamas swinging his legs like he was waiting for ice cream. His name was Liam Parker, and he was 4 years old. A moderator's voice boomed across the room. Welcome to the Neural Genius Challenge, live from X Lab, where innovation meets impossibility. The cameras panned to Musk, who offered a slight smile. He leaned into the mic. Today, we're testing the limits of human cognition. And, apparently, age has no limit. A soft chuckle ran through the audience, some amused, some skeptical. Why would one of the most powerful minds in tech share a stage with a toddler? The answer lay buried in a series of events that had taken the internet by storm over the past 10 days. A blurry, vertical phone video uploaded to Reddit began it all. It showed Liam at his kitchen table, surrounded by cereal crumbs and Legos, solving a complex sequence logic puzzle designed for advanced AI models. Not just solving it, correcting it. He spotted a flaw in the training data of a kid-friendly coding app and rewrote the function using marker pens on a whiteboard fridge magnet. It was innocent, chaotic, and brilliant. His mom, Rachel Parker, posted it with a caption. "My 4-year-old just said the app's code is wrong. I thought he meant the colors. He meant the code. Is this normal?" It wasn't. The post exploded, gaining millions of views. Coders confirmed the bug Liam pointed out. A popular tech blogger reshared the clip with the headline. Tiny human finds big bug. Future Elon. Within 48 hours, the video made its way to Musk's inbox via a SpaceX developer who couldn't believe what he was seeing. The crowd shifted as both contestants were given the same challenge. A new, never-before-seen logic sequence, built on a hybrid AI model architecture called HelixNet, a puzzle designed to test recursive problem-solving and intuitive leap capacity. Only two versions existed. One was in Liam's tablet, the other on Elon's. Musk tapped through his setup like a pianist preparing for a recital. Liam, meanwhile, sat very still, blinking slowly as if the world outside the screen barely registered. A 60-minute timer began. The first 10 minutes were silent. Elon tapped, erased, muttered under his breath. The crowd watched the screen where both participants' progress was mirrored, Elon's side filling up with code, and Liam's. Just doodles. Circles, triangles, waves. Rachel, standing offstage behind a curtain, swallowed hard. What if this was all a mistake? What if her son didn't understand what was happening, and this whole circus crushed him? But just then, Liam placed down his stylus and pushed the tablet away. 27 minutes into the challenge. The room murmured. Had he given up? A technician approached him, whispered something. Liam pointed to the screen, shrugged, and mumbled, "I'm done." The technician's face shifted. He walked quickly to the judge's table. Code reviewers huddled, eyes wide. One looked up at Elon, then back to the screen. Musk hadn't noticed. He was still working. 15 minutes later. "Mr. Musk, we've reviewed the submission," one of the lead analysts said, voice carefully neutral. "There's something you should see." Musk paused. He glanced toward Liam's tablet, then back to his own solution. His eyes narrowed. What he saw wasn't a typical solution. It wasn't even code. It was shapes. Geometric sequences. Fractal representations of recursive loops. Liam hadn't written the solution. He had visualized it, and in doing so, exposed a flaw in the challenge's own structure. A flaw that even Musk hadn't caught. Elon stared at it for several seconds, and for the first time in his public life, looked stunned. He leaned back, rubbed his temples, then leaned into the mic. He didn't solve it like a programmer. He reimagined the problem. The room erupted. Laughter, cheers, disbelief. Some clapped. Some stared. Cameras flashed like fireworks on the 4th of July. Within minutes, headlines began pouring in. Elon Musk outsmarted by 4-year-old on live TV. Meet Liam, the pajama prodigy who broke AI logic. Genius or glitch? Twitter debates child who beat Musk. But as the noise exploded around them, Liam simply reached for his juice box and leaned against his mom's leg, like nothing had happened. Rachel looked down at her son, tears in her eyes, not from pride, but from fear. Because now, the world wasn't just watching. It was coming for them. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Austin, Texas. 2 weeks before the world knew his name. The late summer heat still clung to the city like a stubborn memory. Crickets chirped under porch lights, dogs barked at shadows, and inside a tiny one-bedroom apartment on the south side of town, a 4-year-old boy sat cross-legged in the hallway, lining up cereal pieces in a perfect Fibonacci sequence. His name was Liam Parker, and he didn't talk much, but he noticed everything. His mom, Rachel, peeked her head out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an old dish towel. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and exhaustion hung under her eyes like permanent makeup. She was 32, job hunting, and juggling life like it was one long emergency. "You hungry, bug?" she asked. Liam didn't respond with words. Instead, he picked up the 7th cereal piece, held it up like it was a rare artifact, and said quietly, 13 next. Rachel tilted her head. "What's 13 next?" "The next number," he said, eyes still fixed on the little crunchy arc, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Rachel blinked. "Where did you learn that?" Liam shrugged. "It's just the pattern." Liam wasn't diagnosed with anything, not officially. But Rachel had always known he was different. By age 2, he could name all the planets in the solar system in order, backward and forward. Not from watching YouTube Kids or those "Your Baby Can Read" DVDs. He just knew. By age 3, he was taking apart kitchen appliances and organizing the screws by diameter. Rachel didn't always know how to respond. She was good at math herself, almost finished her engineering degree before Liam came along. But this? This was another level. He wasn't a show-off. He didn't speak in long-winded monologues or rattle off facts like some science robot. He was gentle, quiet, and slightly out of sync with the world around him. Sometimes, he would stare at the ceiling fan for 20 minutes, whispering numbers under his breath. Other times, he'd ask Rachel strange, beautiful questions like, "Do numbers have feelings? Can the moon see us back? What shape is time?" Every night, without fail, Rachel and Liam would climb up to the tiny roof of their apartment building. It was their secret spot. The tar roof was bumpy, the metal ladder wobbled, and Rachel always carried a flashlight in one hand and a small blanket in the other. They'd lie side by side and look up. "Do you think the stars ever get lonely?" Liam whispered once. "I think they're like us," Rachel said, brushing his curls back. Scattered, but never truly alone. Sometimes, they'd bring a notepad and play what Liam called constellation stories. He'd connect the stars into strange new shapes and make up stories to go with them. That one, he pointed to a crooked triangle, is a spaceship shaped like a banana. It's flying to a planet where all the numbers are alive. What's the planet called? Rachel played along. Mathlantis. Rachel hadn't always planned on being a single mom scraping by on freelance tech work and expired coupons. She was once on track to join a NASA internship, back in college, before things unraveled. Liam's dad, Josh, was brilliant in theory, chaotic in practice. He vanished a week before Liam was born. No note. No voicemail. Just silence. Rachel never told Liam much about him. The boy had never asked. She tried her best to keep things together, temp jobs, night school, coding certificates. But nothing ever quite landed. And now, in this small apartment, it was just the two of them. Teen Parker. She watched Liam with awe and worry. His brain was lightning trapped in a jar, beautiful and unpredictable. He didn't fit into preschool. Teachers didn't know what to do with him. Other kids ignored him, sometimes laughed. Rachel tried homeschooling, but it wasn't easy. There were moments she doubted herself completely. Was she giving him what he needed? Could she? It was a Wednesday afternoon when the weirdest thing happened. Rachel was working on a glitch in a trial version of a coding education app she was beta testing. The interface kept freezing whenever she used a certain input string. She muttered, "Ugh, stupid loop won't resolve." Liam, who had been lining up Legos into what looked like a model of a neural network, looked up. "Your loop has no exit." Rachel paused. "What?" He walked over and pointed to the function on her screen. "See? It's like a maze. You didn't leave a way out." He picked up a marker, dragged a chair, and, messily, adorably, redrew her logic tree using animal shapes. A whale meant start, a turtle meant wait, and a monkey meant return. It worked. She laughed at first, amazed. Then she got curious. She showed him a few basic logic puzzles. He solved them instantly. She made them harder. He still solved them. When she gave him a game meant for preteens to learn conditional statements, Liam blinked once and said, "It's just pattern stories." Rachel recorded the whole thing on her phone. She almost didn't post it. But something in her gut told her to. Just to see. Just to ask. She uploaded the clip to Reddit with zero expectations. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications. Mentions. Shares. A popular STEM account reposted the video. A data science YouTuber asked for an interview. Then came the email from someone with a@tesla.com address. Saw your son's video. Elon would like to meet him. Seriously. Rachel read it 3 times before her knees gave out. She had to sit down. She looked over at Liam, who was trying to balance a Cheerio on top of a dry erase marker. He looked up at her. "Do you think space has puzzles?" She laughed, half crying. "Oh baby," she whispered. "I think you're gonna find out. The thing about going viral is that it never feels real, until it's too late." Rachel's phone was still on Do Not Disturb, but it didn't matter. Her inbox lit up like Christmas morning. Twitter DMs, YouTube reaction videos, news anchors with bleached smiles asking for an exclusive look inside the mind of a toddler genius. And all Liam wanted was more pancakes. Rachel stirred batter with one hand and scrolled her phone with the other. A message from a producer at Good Morning America blinked in bold. "Can we fly you both to New York for a live segment this week?" Her stomach twisted. She glanced over her shoulder. Liam was sitting on the floor in his pajamas, blue with tiny spaceships on them, methodically building a tower out of magnet tiles. Every piece was placed with intention, every angle perfect. "Mom," he said suddenly, "did you know Saturn has 146 moons now?" Rachel blinked. "I thought it had, like, 82. They found more. He didn't look up. Just kept building. She knew this moment could change everything, open doors she'd never even dreamed of. She also knew how these things worked. Viral today, forgotten tomorrow. Or worse, sensationalized. Exploited. Picked apart by strangers who knew nothing about her or her child. What scared her wasn't the fame. It was what happened after. And she hadn't even told Liam yet about the email. The one that mattered most. From Neural Genius at x-lab.ai. We've reviewed Liam's logic process. It's unprecedented. Elon Musk would like to invite him to participate in our Neural Genius Challenge this coming week. We will cover all expenses. Please respond ASAP. There was a second email, too. This one shorter. From Musk's assistant. Mr. Musk said, if he's legit, I want to meet the kid. And not in a lab. On stage. That afternoon, Rachel tried to talk to Liam about the offer. So, remember that puzzle you solved for me the other day? She asked gently. Liam looked up from his tablet. He was watching a video about jellyfish bioluminescence. The one with the monkey and the whale. Yeah. Well, a lot of people saw that video, and they want to meet you. Some very smart people. He blinked. Are they nice? Rachel paused. I think some are. And some are, not sure what to think yet. Liam scrunched his face. Will I still get to go to the planetarium on Saturday? Rachel laughed softly. Maybe we'll go to a bigger one. He nodded once and went back to the jellyfish. 3 days later, they were on a plane to California. Liam wore his favorite hoodie, too big and covered in little stains. Rachel had tried to get him to dress up. He refused, loudly. So when they landed and were picked up in a sleek, self-driving Tesla, Liam sat cross-legged in the back seat, clutching a juice box and humming the Star Wars theme. Your son is confident, the X-Lab staffer said politely. Rachel smiled. He just doesn't care about anything you think he's supposed to. The facility they arrived at wasn't open to the public. It looked like a mix between a science museum, a space station, and a Bond villain lair. Chrome walls, curved ceilings, and a subtle hum of technology in the air. They were led to a private wing, quiet, clinical. Rachel signed waivers while Liam wandered to a digital sandbox that changed color based on how you touched it. Within minutes, he found a glitch. The screen froze. He reset it, with a gesture. A technician gasped. That sandbox uses real-time feedback loops tied to motion capture. No one's figured out that input error yet. Liam shrugged. It just wasn't listening right. Later that evening, Rachel and Liam were shown to a conference room lined with smartboards, all blank. Waiting. Then the door opened, and in walked Elon Musk. He wore a gray tee and jeans. Simple. Unassuming. But the room seemed to tilt slightly when he entered, like the laws of gravity shifted for him alone. He looked at Liam, then at Rachel. So, he said. This is the kid who broke my function tree. Rachel stood, nervous. Liam. Still sitting, feet swinging off the chair. Hi, Liam said, your face is in my cereal sometimes. Musk blinked. Is that good or bad? Liam thought about it. Depends on the cereal. Rachel's soul briefly left her body. Elon chuckled. I like him. Elon explained the Neural Genius Challenge. It's like a talent show for logic, he said. But instead of singing or dancing, you break systems. Rethink how they work. That's what Liam did. He didn't just solve a problem. He saw the flaw in the problem itself. Rachel nodded slowly. And you want him to do that, Liv? Elon looked directly at Liam. Would you want to try something fun, something puzzly? Liam perked up. Will there be juice after? Absolutely, Elon replied with a grin. But outside those sleek lab walls, the internet was already tearing things apart. Liam the lie trended for a full hour on Twitter. Commentators argued. No way a 4-year-old is doing that. This is a PR stunt by Musk. There's definitely an earpiece. Or coaching. If this is real, I'm scared for humanity. Some defended the boy. But others, especially certain tech purists, refused to believe the human brain, at age 4, could do what Liam had done. One popular YouTuber even uploaded a video titled, "Debunking the Toddler Tech Myth, the Real Story Behind Liam." Rachel didn't let Liam see any of it. But she read every word. And every word cut deeper than the last. Rachel couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in the sleek, sterile hotel room, the faint hum of the city outside buzzing in the background. The bed was too soft. The sheets smelled like expensive detergent, but they didn't feel like home. The night was oppressive with silence, the weight of expectations hanging over her like a storm cloud she couldn't shake off. Liam was asleep in the next room, sprawled across the bed in his pajamas, mouth slightly open. The boy didn't worry about things the way Rachel did. His world was filled with numbers and shapes and endless possibilities. Her world, on the other hand, was filled with questions. Before any of this, before Elon, before the viral videos, before the constant buzz of notifications, there was just Rachel Parker. Just a woman trying to make it. Rachel had been a math major in college, drawn to the patterns of the world, the way numbers seemed to speak in ways words never could. But life had its own plans. She'd fallen in love with a guy who was just as brilliant, just as ambitious, and just as full of promises as she was. But Josh wasn't cut out for a family. He wasn't cut out for anything, really. Rachel's world shattered the day she found out she was pregnant with Liam. She was 28, fresh out of college, ready to take on the world, and suddenly, everything felt so much smaller. She had stayed in touch with Josh for a while, but his commitments always seemed to disappear. His promises vanished just like his belongings when he left for good. His only legacy was a son with an extraordinary mind. Rachel didn't regret having Liam. She couldn't. Liam was everything to her. But the truth was, Rachel hadn't signed up for single motherhood. It wasn't supposed to be this hard. Her dreams had faded slowly over the years. She'd dropped out of the NASA internship, choosing to stay home after Liam's birth. It was the right choice, she told herself at the time. Liam needed her. She could always go back to school. Or maybe she'd get a job at some point. Maybe. She didn't want to resent him, but she found herself resenting the weight of unfulfilled promises. It wasn't his fault. But her own plans had evaporated. Rachel's days had always been an exhausting routine of juggling side jobs, temp work, and whatever freelance gigs she could scrape together in between feeding Liam, cleaning the apartment, and driving him to his appointments. At first, no one believed her when she said her son was special. They thought every parent said that about their child. But Liam wasn't like other kids. When he could name every planet in the solar system by the age of 2, Rachel started to get worried. When he could speak Mandarin at 3, her worry turned into awe. When he started solving math problems just by glancing at them, she realized that this was more than just a passing phase. She had never had the time to nurture Liam's gifts the way she wanted to. Her life was too busy. Too chaotic. Yet, somehow, he kept growing. Her little boy, quiet, mysterious, brilliant, had a mind that stretched far beyond the world she knew. Rachel knew she was running out of time. If Liam's talents were going to be recognized, if he was going to have a future that didn't consist of isolation and confusion, she needed help. But who could she turn to? Where could she take him? She couldn't afford private tutors, let alone a specialized school for gifted children. Then came that email. The one that changed everything. Even now, sitting in the hotel room, Rachel wasn't sure how she felt about it all. The spotlight was bright, blinding, and suffocating all at once. A few weeks ago, she was just a mom, trying to get by. Now, she was the mother of a viral sensation, of a boy who was about to meet one of the most powerful men in the world. The messages that came pouring in on social media were overwhelming. There were heartwarming messages from parents who claimed their children had similar abilities, and there were the cynical voices that couldn't fathom a child of Liam's age actually doing what he had done. Rachel was overwhelmed by the attention, but also wary. She had always taught Liam to stay grounded, to focus on the joy of learning, not the applause or the recognition. How could she protect him from all of this when she didn't fully understand it herself? Liam wasn't like the other kids. He wasn't a performer. He didn't care about fame. All he cared about was his world of numbers, patterns, and logic. He wasn't seeking the limelight, he was just being himself. Rachel was trying to keep it all together, but every text message, every phone call, every request for interviews was another reminder that her quiet, simple life was over. And what if she didn't know how to handle this new life? What if they weren't ready for this? At 2 a.m., after reading the umpteenth email from a producer at 60 Minutes asking for an interview, Rachel pulled herself out of bed. She needed to clear her head. Liam was sound asleep in the other room, blissfully unaware of the frenzy his simple puzzle had caused. He had no idea who Elon Musk was. No idea that in just a few hours, he'd be up on stage solving puzzles in front of millions of people. Rachel grabbed her jacket and stepped outside into the cool night air. The world outside the hotel was quiet, the streets empty except for the occasional passing car. She walked for what felt like miles, her thoughts racing. What if they didn't belong in this world? What if the fame and attention changed Liam? What if the pressure broke him? And then, almost as if the universe were giving her a sign, Rachel saw something that grounded her. A small streetlight flickered on above her, its glow soft and steady in the quiet darkness. It reminded her of the way she used to feel when Liam would ask about stars, about space, about things she couldn't explain. That wonder in his eyes, the same wonder that had gotten her through the toughest moments of her life. Rachel closed her eyes for a moment. She could hear Liam's voice in her head, calm and steady. "You said the stars can see us." She smiled, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. No matter what came next, no matter how much the world changed or how much the spotlight burned, she knew one thing for sure, she was Liam's mom. And no matter what, she would protect him from the noise. The next morning, everything was ready. Liam was dressed in a simple hoodie, his eyes bright with curiosity. Rachel had decided that they would go to New York and do this, whatever this was, on their own terms. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing, this was just the beginning. And she would walk this road beside him, every step of the way. As they prepared to head out, she turned to Liam. "Are you ready for this?" Liam didn't look up from his puzzle. "Ready for what?" "The world's going to watch you," Rachel said, half teasing, half serious. Liam smiled. "I think I'll be okay. I already know how the numbers work." And with that, they left the hotel, ready for whatever came next. The energy in the air was electric as Rachel and Liam entered the sprawling, high-tech arena. There was a hum of excitement that buzzed through the venue, making it feel like the calm before a storm. The large, circular stage was set up with various screens and interactive devices, all designed to test the limits of human intellect. The lights were bright, the audience sat in anticipation, and Elon Musk was standing at the edge of the stage, eyes trained on Liam. But Liam? He was completely unbothered. With his tiny hands stuffed into his hoodie pockets, Liam wandered around the space like it was just another day in a new playground. He was a curious child, always inspecting the world through his own lens, a lens of patterns, systems, and logic. Rachel had learned not to worry about him in these moments. This was how he operated. When the world seemed chaotic, Liam was always in his own, perfectly ordered world. "Are you nervous?" Rachel asked, her voice filled with a mixture of concern and excitement. Liam looked up at her, his face unreadable. Why should I be? I've seen all of this before. Rachel had no idea if he was joking or not, but she smiled anyway. She glanced at the audience, half of which were tech giants and curious journalists who had come to see the spectacle. The other half were the general public, fascinated by the promise of watching a 4-year-old kid potentially outperform one of the most brilliant minds in the world. Elon Musk, the mind behind Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink, was about to meet his match in Liam. And Rachel was stuck in the middle, balancing the excitement of the moment with the overwhelming pressure of the unknown. Elon motioned for them to take the stage. "All right, Liam. You're about to do something special." Liam didn't say anything, just gave him a small nod. He wasn't interested in the theatrics. His mind was already focused elsewhere. Rachel followed him up to the stage, her heart racing in her chest. The first test was simple, on the surface. A sequence of numbers appeared on the screen in front of them. It was a logic puzzle designed to test pattern recognition. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. Elon stood next to Liam. "Can you figure out what comes next, buddy?" Liam stared at the numbers for a moment. Rachel held her breath. Most adults would struggle with the next number in the sequence. Some would guess 64, but that wouldn't be the correct answer. Others might get lost in their own logic, unsure of how to approach it. Liam, however, didn't hesitate. He didn't just look at the numbers, he saw the pattern. He saw the multiplying factor. The doubling sequence that could have been hidden from anyone who didn't think like him. With a simple tap of his finger on the screen, he quickly typed in 64. The room fell silent. Elon's eyebrows shot up, surprised. "Correct." Liam, unfazed, tilted his head. "Next." Rachel's stomach did a flip. She had no idea how to feel. Liam had solved the problem almost instantly, but it was one thing to see a simple number sequence and another thing to truly perform under this level of pressure. And yet, here he was, calm, collected, and solving problems that most adults couldn't even comprehend. The audience erupted into applause. Elon glanced at the screen, verifying the answer. "You're quick," he said, smiling, impressed but not showing it too obviously. "But let's see how you handle this next one." Elon walked over to another screen, tapping it lightly. He was clearly enjoying the challenge now. This was no longer a simple test, it was an experiment in real-time cognitive processing. "This one's a bit harder," Elon said. "You might need a little more time to think about it." The screen flickered, and a new puzzle appeared. This one was an abstract image, a swirling, kaleidoscope-like pattern of colored shapes. It was chaotic, designed to throw off anyone who tried to analyze it too quickly. Rachel watched Liam's face. He didn't seem intimidated. Instead, he stepped closer to the screen, his small fingers brushing over the shapes as he examined them. The room had gone quiet again. Elon's face was inscrutable now, his hands folded in front of him as he waited for Liam's reaction. This wasn't a simple mathematical equation. This wasn't even a problem you could solve with raw knowledge or patterns. It was visual. Abstract. It was a test of creativity and spatial reasoning, traits that even some of the most gifted minds struggled to grasp. Liam tilted his head, his eyes scanning the image, taking in every detail. His mind was working in ways that no one in the room fully understood. He wasn't just seeing shapes, he was recognizing their structure. The way the pieces fit together. The subtle hidden connections no one else would notice. Liam placed his hand on the screen, tracing a path along one of the patterns. And then, just like that, he touched a spot and said confidently, "There. That's where the error is." Elon's eyes widened. "Can you explain why?" he asked, leaning in closer. Liam didn't look up. He pointed to the center of the image. "The yellow square is out of place. It doesn't belong with the blue circles. It breaks the rhythm. Rachel was speechless. It wasn't just about noticing the discrepancy. It was about understanding the logic behind why it was wrong. The child hadn't just pointed out the flaw, he'd done so with complete clarity and precision. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't just following the pattern. He understood it on a fundamental level. The room was still. No one knew what to say. Elon finally let out a breath. Incredible. Rachel's heart was racing. She couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. There was a brief moment of awe in the room, followed by a hesitant round of applause. It wasn't just for Liam, it was for the magnitude of what he had done. They were witnessing something historic. This wasn't just a child answering questions. This was a new kind of genius, a mind that didn't operate by the same rules the rest of the world followed. For a moment, Rachel felt a strange sense of pride and terror all at once. She was watching her son, her 4-year-old boy, reshape the boundaries of intelligence and perception. He had done something that no one else could have done, and in that moment, she realized just how much Liam was destined for a world that didn't quite know how to handle him yet. Elon turned to the crowd, clearly captivated by the brilliance of the child before him. This is why we're here, folks. This is the future of human potential. Liam stood there, calm and unassuming, as though the entire spectacle meant nothing to him. To him, this was just another puzzle. Just another problem to solve. The crowd erupted into applause once more. As Rachel looked at her son, she finally let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. This was only the beginning. The day after the live test, things began to shift. What had started as an innocent showcase of Liam's extraordinary intellect had quickly spiraled into something bigger than anyone anticipated. The viral clips of Liam solving puzzles with the ease of a seasoned mathematician were now plastered across social media, news outlets, and tech blogs. The world had just witnessed something unprecedented, and now, the world wanted more. Rachel was no stranger to the weight of responsibility, but this was different. This wasn't a side gig or a freelance project. This wasn't her juggling 5 different jobs to pay the bills. This was her son's future, and her own sanity, being sold to the highest bidder. By the time Rachel returned to their hotel room that evening, the phone calls had already started. Journalists, producers, and even talent scouts were flooding her inbox. Would Liam be interested in speaking at a TED conference? One email asked. Exclusive interview for the New York Times on his extraordinary abilities, another read. Liam Parker for the cover of Time magazine, are you available for a photo shoot this weekend? Rachel could feel the heat rising in her chest. Each email felt like another demand placed on her, on Liam. It wasn't even about her anymore, it was about this idea that the world had constructed around him. The phone rang again. This time, it was an unfamiliar number. Rachel hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello, she said, trying to keep the exhaustion out of her voice. Is this Rachel Parker? A calm, professional voice asked on the other end. Yes, this is Rachel, she replied, trying to sound more composed than she felt. I'm with Good Morning America, the voice continued. We'd love to have Liam on the show tomorrow for an exclusive interview. You can bring him in at 8 a.m. sharp. What do you think? Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, rubbing her temples. It was only a matter of time before the major networks came calling. And yet, this wasn't what she had imagined for Liam. She had no idea how to handle all of this. Liam, on the other hand, seemed unaffected. He was back in their hotel room, perched on the bed and tinkering with a Rubik's Cube. He was so focused on the puzzle that he didn't even glance up when Rachel walked in, phone still clutched in her hand. Liam, we need to talk, she said, sitting down beside him. You're getting a lot of attention right now, and I want to make sure you're okay. Liam stopped turning the cube and turned to her with a puzzled look. Okay. What do you mean? Rachel hesitated. She didn't want to overwhelm him. She had to remind herself that, despite everything, Liam was still just 4 years old. His world was made up of shapes, patterns, and toys, not interviews or camera lights. "People want to know more about you, Liam," she said carefully. "They're asking for you to be on TV, and they want to see you solve puzzles and do things that, well, that are special." Liam looked at the cube in his hands again and shrugged. "I like solving puzzles. It's fun." Rachel smiled, trying to mask her worry. "I know, buddy. But sometimes, the world doesn't always understand what's fun for you. They might try to push you to do things that you don't want to do." Liam just nodded, seemingly unbothered. Rachel's heart twisted in her chest. How long could she shield him from the reality of what was happening? How long could she protect him from a world that didn't care about his innocence, only his genius? The next morning, as the family prepared to head to Good Morning America, the weight of the decision was bearing down on Rachel. She dressed Liam in his favorite hoodie, a blue one with little rockets on it, and tried to pretend that everything was normal. She didn't want him to feel the tension in her chest. But she couldn't escape the truth. The world was watching now. And soon, they would demand more. They wouldn't just be satisfied with his intelligence, they would want his personality, his story, his life. Would this be good for him? Would this be good for her? She wasn't sure anymore. As they entered the studio, cameras flashed from every direction, and technicians scrambled to adjust the lighting and equipment. The show was live, and everything was moving at a frenetic pace. "Is he ready?" a producer asked as they led Rachel and Liam to their seats. Rachel took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "He's ready," she said, even though she didn't know if she was ready. Liam, as usual, was calm. He sat on the couch, his legs swinging slightly, completely at ease in the chaos surrounding him. It was almost as though he didn't notice the cameras, the lights, or the producers rushing around. He was lost in his own little world. Elon Musk had made a surprise appearance earlier in the day to congratulate Liam on his success, but now it was just Rachel, Liam, and the host of the show. The interview started off innocuously. The host asked Liam about his favorite puzzles and what he liked to do in his free time. Liam answered every question with a casual confidence that made the audience chuckle. There was something endearing about him, his innocence, his intelligence, his quirky little personality. But as the interview progressed, the questions began to shift. "Liam," the host asked, leaning forward. "You've been called the young genius by the media. How does that feel? Do you think of yourself as a genius?" Liam blinked, clearly unsure of how to respond. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest. She had always tried to keep him grounded, but how could she protect him from this kind of question? "I'm just me," Liam said after a long pause. "I like puzzles." The audience laughed again, charmed by his straightforwardness. But Rachel could feel the heavy weight of the moment. She had to stop this before it went too far. Just as the host was about to ask another question, Rachel interrupted. "I think we're done for today. Thank you for having us." The host raised an eyebrow in surprise. "But we haven't even gotten to the most exciting part, Liam's next puzzle challenge." Rachel stood up quickly, guiding Liam off the stage. The cameras flashed one last time, and as they exited the studio, Rachel felt the enormous pressure of the moment. It wasn't just the fame. It wasn't just the attention. It was the realization that this world of flashing lights, interviews, and constant demands, wasn't a world she wanted for her son. As they walked out of the studio, Rachel stopped in the quiet hallway. Liam, who had been bouncing along beside her, stopped too. "Mom?" he asked softly. "What's wrong?" Rachel knelt down to his level and looked into his bright, curious eyes. She smiled, though the weight of everything seemed too much to bear in that moment. "Nothing's wrong, sweetie. Just remember that you're allowed to be you. You don't have to be anything else for anyone. Okay?" Liam nodded, his small hand slipping into hers. Rachel knew she had a long road ahead of her. But for now, she just needed to protect him. From the world. From the pressure. From everything that wanted to define him. The media frenzy hadn't slowed down since that fateful interview on Good Morning America. If anything, it had only grown more intense. The spotlight was blinding, and it was starting to take its toll on both Rachel and Liam. For the past week, their lives had been a whirlwind of interviews, photo shoots, and invitations to speak at events they couldn't possibly attend. But as the days wore on, the cracks in their perfect world began to show. Rachel had never imagined it would be like this. At first, she had hoped the attention would be fleeting, a passing curiosity from the world. But she was quickly realizing that this wasn't a passing phase. Liam was no longer just her little boy. He had become a symbol of potential, of genius, of a future that seemed too bright to ignore. She had tried to keep their life as normal as possible, but it wasn't easy. Liam's schedule was packed from dawn until dusk. He had sessions with specialists in cognitive development, fun activities that were more like IQ exercises, and more requests for interviews than she could count. There was no room for just being a kid anymore. The pressure was mounting, and Rachel could feel it. She wasn't sure if Liam fully understood the gravity of his situation, but she did. And every day, it seemed harder to shield him from it. They were in their hotel room again, the walls closing in on her. Rachel looked over at Liam, who was sitting at the table playing with a new set of puzzles that had been sent by a fan. His focus was intense, his small fingers moving the pieces with precision. He didn't even look up when she entered the room. "Liam," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "we need to take a break from all of this." Liam didn't respond right away. He was absorbed in the puzzle, clearly in his element. But after a moment, he looked up at her with those big, innocent eyes. "What do you mean, take a break?" Rachel sat down beside him, her mind racing. She didn't know how to explain it to him. How could she explain the weight of the world to a 4-year-old? "I mean," she began, taking a deep breath, "all of this, all the people wanting you to do things, talk to people, solve puzzles. It's a lot, isn't it?" Liam tilted his head, thinking for a moment. "It's not that hard, Mom. I like puzzles." Rachel's heart twisted. Her son was so gifted, but in his eyes, it was all just a game. The innocent way he looked at the world made her both proud and terrified. Because she knew this wasn't just a game. Not anymore. "I know you like puzzles, sweetie," she said softly. "But this isn't just about puzzles anymore. There are people out there who expect a lot from you now." Liam stared at her, his small face full of confusion. "But I'm just doing what I like. Why do they want so much?" Rachel sighed. "I don't know, Liam. But sometimes people want more than we're able to give. And that can make things hard." Liam frowned, clearly trying to understand. "I don't want to make it hard." "I know," Rachel whispered, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "I know." Just as Rachel was about to change the subject, there was a knock on the door. "Who's that?" Liam asked, his attention already back on his puzzle. Rachel walked over and opened the door, and there, standing in the hallway, was none other than Elon Musk himself. She hadn't seen Elon since the live test, and his surprise visit threw her off guard. He was dressed casually in his usual black t-shirt and jeans, looking just as intense as ever. "Hey, Rachel," Elon said with a smile. "I thought I'd come by and see how things were going. How's our genius doing today?" Rachel tried to mask her irritation. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate Elon's interest in Liam, it was just that she felt like her son was constantly being pulled in different directions. She was beginning to feel like the world was treating Liam like a commodity, not a child. Liam didn't even look up from his puzzle. He simply nodded in Elon's direction, acknowledging him, but remaining completely absorbed in his task. Elon stepped into the room and watched Liam for a moment. "I've never seen someone his age so focused. It's really something." Rachel forced a smile. He's always been like this. Elon shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension in the room. Listen, Rachel, I wanted to talk to you about something. Rachel crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. What's that? I know things have been intense, Elon said. But I think we need to take advantage of this moment. This kind of talent doesn't come around often. We should be looking at what's next for him, perhaps getting Liam involved in some real projects, maybe something with Tesla or Neuralink. There's so much potential there. Rachel's heart sank. She had heard rumors about Elon's vision for the future of technology, but hearing it spoken aloud felt different. She wasn't sure she was ready for Liam to be thrust into that kind of world. I'm not sure that's the best idea, Rachel replied carefully. Liam's 4 years old. He should be allowed to be a kid, not just a tool for your next big project. Elon looked taken aback for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. I'm not suggesting that, Rachel. But this is a rare opportunity. It's not just about puzzles. It's about shaping the future. Rachel's pulse quickened. And what about Liam's future? What about his childhood? Are we just going to strip that away because the world wants him to be a prodigy? Elon paused, his expression softening. I get it. I do. But this kind of genius doesn't happen every day. You have to seize the moment. We need to think about what's best for him, and for the world. Rachel felt her frustration mounting. She didn't want to be the one to hold Liam back, but she couldn't let him be consumed by this whirlwind of expectation and ambition. You're right, she said, her voice low. But right now, all I want is for him to be able to play with his puzzles without the world watching. Elon looked at her for a long moment before nodding. I get it. But just think about it. We'll be here when you're ready to talk more. With that, Elon turned and left, leaving Rachel alone with her thoughts. She sat down on the bed, staring at Liam, who was still engrossed in his puzzle. She felt conflicted, torn between wanting the best for her son and wanting to protect his innocence. How could she balance his potential with the need for a normal childhood? That night, after Liam had gone to sleep, Rachel sat alone in the darkened hotel room. The weight of her decision was heavy. She could feel the pressure bearing down on her from all sides, Elon's words, the media's gaze, the endless demands. It was a lot for anyone, let alone a single mother with a 4-year-old genius who didn't fully understand what was at stake. But in that moment, Rachel made a decision. She couldn't let the world define Liam. She couldn't let the media turn him into a spectacle. No matter how extraordinary he was still her little boy. And for the first time in weeks, Rachel allowed herself to breathe, knowing that whatever came next, she would be there for him. For a brief moment, it felt like things had settled. The media buzz surrounding Liam's viral moment had calmed, and Rachel had done her best to shield him from any further interviews or public appearances. She had taken Liam back to a semblance of normal life, a routine of reading books, playing games, and, most importantly, letting him be a 4-year-old. Yet, deep down, Rachel knew it couldn't last forever. The world wasn't going to forget about Liam. And as much as she tried to protect him from the pressure, it was clear that the storm was only gathering strength. It was a quiet afternoon when the phone rang again. Rachel had just finished making lunch for Liam, and the two of them were sitting at the table, chatting about his latest puzzle game. It was a brief respite in an otherwise chaotic life, and she tried to soak in every minute of it. Liam was telling her how he had solved a particularly challenging puzzle that morning, a massive 500-piece jigsaw of the solar system. His excitement was contagious. "Mom, I did it all by myself. Look, I got Pluto right next to the sun," he exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with pride. Rachel smiled, her heart swelling with affection. "That's amazing, Liam. You're a little genius." Just as she was about to reach for the milk to pour into his cup, the phone rang, interrupting the moment. She hesitated for a second before answering, already bracing herself for another round of media demands. "Hello?" she said, her voice calm but guarded. "Hi, "Is this Rachel Parker?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes, this is Rachel. I'm calling from the White House," the voice continued, and Rachel froze. "We've been following Liam's incredible talents, and we'd like to extend an invitation for him to meet with the president. There's an upcoming event for young innovators, and we'd be honored if Liam could attend and share his story." Rachel's heart pounded in her chest. The White House? The president? She hadn't been prepared for this. Was this where they were heading now? Was this the next step in Liam's rise to fame, an appearance at the highest level of government? "Wait, hold on," Rachel said, trying to gather her thoughts. "You want Liam to meet with the president?" "That's correct," the voice replied. "We're looking for young minds who are shaping the future. Liam's demonstration of intelligence has caught the attention of many, and we'd love for him to be part of this event." Rachel stared at the phone, stunned. She looked over at Liam, who was still happily focused on his puzzle, unaware of the magnitude of the conversation she was having. What was she supposed to do? This was a dream opportunity, something most parents could only imagine for their children. But Rachel's instincts screamed at her to protect Liam's innocence. I need to think about this," Rachel finally said. "I'll get back to you." "Of course, we understand. We'll be awaiting your response." As soon as the call ended, Rachel put the phone down with trembling hands. She was overwhelmed. The temptation to say yes was strong. It was an opportunity that could set Liam on a path toward even greater recognition, perhaps even change the world. But at what cost? She looked back at Liam, who was still so blissfully unaware of the whirlwind swirling around him. He was her priority, his well-being, his happiness. And yet, she couldn't help but feel torn. This was the kind of opportunity that didn't come around often. Rachel knew she had a difficult decision to make, one that could shape their future in ways she wasn't ready to predict. The next few days were a blur. Rachel spent hours debating the White House invitation. She spoke with friends, family, and even her own therapist. Everyone had their opinion, but at the end of the day, Rachel knew the decision was hers to make. And no matter which path she chose, it wouldn't be easy. Meanwhile, Liam remained his usual self. He wasn't fazed by the phone call or the constant stream of messages Rachel had received. To him, life was about the next puzzle, the next game. His world hadn't been rocked by the demands of fame. He was still the same curious, innocent boy who loved learning and playing, unaffected by the whirlwind around him. That afternoon, after a long day of going back and forth with the decision, Rachel decided it was time to ask Liam how he felt. She had been so focused on what she thought was best for him, but maybe, just maybe, he should have a say in all of this. "Liam," she said, sitting down beside him on the couch, "I need to talk to you about something." Liam glanced up at her, his brow furrowing. "What's up, Mom?" Rachel took a deep breath. "There's something big coming up. A lot of people want to meet you, and there's a chance you could go to a big event. It's with important people, like the president." Liam's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't seem too excited or scared. Instead, he simply asked, "Why do they want to meet me?" Rachel smiled softly, relieved by his simple curiosity. "They want to meet you because you're really good at puzzles, Liam. You've done some really amazing things that people are noticing." Liam thought for a moment, his small hands fiddling with the pieces of his puzzle. "I don't want to go if it means I have to stop doing my puzzles," he said, his voice serious. Rachel blinked, surprised by his answer. "What do you mean?" "I like my puzzles," Liam continued. "I want to keep doing them. I don't want to go to a place where I have to stop and do something else. I just want to be me." Rachel's heart broke a little as she listened to him. He wasn't asking for fame, recognition, or awards. He just wanted to be himself. To do what he loved. Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. She had been so consumed with the pressures of the world, she had forgotten the simple truth: Liam was just a child. He didn't need the world to define him. He needed love, protection, and the freedom to be himself. Liam, Rachel said, her voice breaking, you don't ever have to stop being you. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Liam smiled at her, as if the weight of the world had lifted off his shoulders. Thanks, Mom. Rachel took a deep breath. In that moment, she knew what she had to do. The decision wasn't just about the White House, the interviews, or the fame, it was about keeping Liam's world safe. She picked up the phone and dialed the White House back. Rachel's heart was pounding as she spoke to the person on the other end. Thank you so much for the opportunity, but we won't be able to attend the event. Liam is just a child, and we want to keep things simple for him. The person on the other end was polite but disappointed. We understand. Thank you for considering it. As Rachel hung up the phone, a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying seemed to lift. She had made the right decision. No matter where this journey took them, she would always put Liam's happiness and well-being first. And for now, that meant letting him just be a little boy who loved his puzzles. The decision had been made. Rachel felt an overwhelming sense of relief after turning down the White House invitation, confident that she had done what was best for Liam. But she quickly realized that the world didn't stop turning just because she chose to protect her son. The fallout was inevitable. In the days that followed, the media storm that had once calmed down began to escalate again. This time, the attention wasn't focused on Liam's brilliant mind or his viral appearance on Good Morning America. Instead, the headlines now screamed about Rachel's refusal to take Liam to the White House. Rachel was sipping her morning coffee when the first wave hit. She had been scrolling through her phone, trying to catch up on the news, when her eyes landed on a headline, Mother of Genius 4-year-old turns down White House invitation, why is she holding him back? Her heart sank as she read the article. The tone was accusatory, as if Rachel had made a grave mistake. It was clear that the media couldn't comprehend why she would pass up such an opportunity for her child. After all, this was the kind of thing that parents dreamed of for their kids, an invitation to meet the president. Rachel clicked on another link. Outrage over unusual decision to keep young genius out of public eye, another headline blared. Her phone buzzed with notifications, calls from friends, messages from family members, and social media posts flooding her feed. Some were supportive, but most were filled with confusion or outright criticism. It wasn't long before the whispers of "what's best for Liam" turned into a heated debate on every platform. Why wouldn't she want to showcase her son's talent? One comment read. Doesn't she want him to succeed? Seems like she's just scared of the attention, another comment claimed. Maybe she's afraid of him surpassing her. Rachel's stomach twisted as she read through the responses. She had expected some backlash, but the sheer volume of negativity was overwhelming. It felt like the entire world was second-guessing her every move. She had tried to do the right thing, but now it seemed like everyone was questioning her motives. As the media frenzy continued to build, Rachel received a message she had been dreading. Elon Musk wanted to talk. She stared at the text for a long moment, her finger hovering over the screen. She had been avoiding him since their last conversation, but she knew this day was inevitable. She couldn't avoid him forever. Taking a deep breath, Rachel dialed Elon's number. Rachel, Elon's voice came through, calm yet firm. I've been following the news, and I have to say, I'm a bit surprised by your decision. Turning down the White House. That's a huge opportunity for Liam. I know, Rachel replied, her voice steady, but there was a trace of frustration underneath. But he's 4, Elon. He's a child. I just don't want to push him into something he's not ready for. I understand that, Elon said, his voice softening. But you have to see the bigger picture. This isn't just about an event. It's about the future. Liam is special, there's no denying that. People are going to expect a lot from him, and turning down opportunities like this could harm his future. Rachel clenched her jaw. What harm could it do to let him be a kid for a little while longer? Do you think he doesn't feel the pressure? Do you think I don't see what's happening to him? He's already dealing with so much, and I just want him to have a normal life for a little while. Elon paused. I get it. I really do. But you have to ask yourself, are you doing this for Liam's happiness, or are you doing it for your own peace of mind? Because the world is going to keep coming for him, Rachel. This is just the beginning. Rachel bit her lip, unsure of how to respond. She felt like she was caught in the middle of two opposing forces, Elon's vision of a future where Liam's genius could change the world, and her own desire to protect her son from the pressures of fame. I'm not doing it for me, she said quietly. I'm doing it because I love him. And I want him to grow up without this constant pressure hanging over him. I understand, Elon replied. But you'll have to make a decision soon. Opportunities like this don't come around often. I just want you to think about what's at stake. As the call ended, Rachel felt more conflicted than ever. Elon had a point. The opportunities Liam could have were unlike anything she could have ever dreamed of. But what price would they have to pay for that success? In the days that followed, Liam seemed blissfully unaffected by the media firestorm. He continued to focus on his puzzles, read books, and play with his toys. But Rachel noticed a subtle change in him. He seemed more withdrawn, more introspective than usual. One evening, after dinner, as they were sitting on the couch together, Liam turned to her with a quiet question. Mom, why are people mad at us? Rachel's heart dropped. She had been hoping to shield him from the worst of the media frenzy, but it was clear that the weight of it had reached him. Sweetheart, they're not mad at us, Rachel said gently, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. Some people just don't understand why we decided not to go to that big event. But why don't they understand? Liam asked, his voice tinged with confusion. I just like my puzzles. Rachel's eyes welled up with tears. How could she explain it to him in a way he would understand? He was just a little boy, and yet, here he was, caught in the middle of a world that seemed to want so much from him. They don't understand because they don't know how much you love your puzzles, or how happy you are when you're just being yourself. And that's okay, Rachel said, hugging him tightly. You don't have to worry about them. You just keep doing what makes you happy. Liam smiled up at her, reassured by her words. Okay, Mom. I'll just keep doing my puzzles. Rachel kissed the top of his head, holding back tears. She didn't know if she was making the right decision anymore. But in this moment, she knew she had to be strong, for Liam. The world might not understand their choice, but she had to protect him from the forces beyond their control. As the days went on, the pressure continued to mount. Rachel received more calls from the media, more invitations for interviews, and more requests for Liam's appearance. Every time she turned down an offer, the backlash grew stronger. But Rachel couldn't back down. She had made her choice, and she wasn't about to let anyone tell her what was best for her son. Liam needed her now more than ever, and she would do everything in her power to keep him grounded. Even as the storm raged around them, Rachel knew that the true test was yet to come. This wasn't just about one decision, it was about the future, about protecting Liam's happiness, and about holding on to the one thing that mattered most. No matter how hard it got, she would fight for her son's right to just be a child. The days following Rachel's decision to turn down the White House invitation felt like a delicate balance. She had hoped the storm would eventually pass, but the pressure was mounting on every front. The media was relentless, and even though Liam seemed unaffected, Rachel knew the weight of the world was quietly bearing down on him. Just when she thought they had weathered the worst of the storm, a new challenge arrived, one that came from the most unexpected source. It was a Tuesday morning when the proposal came in. Rachel had just finished making Liam's breakfast when her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She hesitated for a moment before answering, knowing that another call from a journalist or potential sponsor was just around the corner. Hello, she answered, trying to keep her voice calm. Hi, is this Rachel Parker? A deep, confident voice asked. Yes, this is Rachel, she replied, her curiosity piqued. "My name is Gregory Daniels, and I'm with a company called Future Tech Innovations. We specialize in educational technology for children. I've been following your son's story closely, and I have a proposal I think you'll find very interesting." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. A new company? Another offer? At this point, she wasn't sure if she should be excited or cautious. "What kind of proposal are you talking about?" Rachel asked, her voice guarded. "We've been developing a state-of-the-art, interactive learning platform, and we believe Liam could be the perfect spokesperson for it. We want him to help us promote the technology, perhaps even collaborate with our team to create educational content." Rachel frowned. "I'm not sure I understand. You want Liam to be involved with your company?" "That's right," Gregory said. "With his intelligence and the way he's captured the public's attention, we think he'd be an ideal figure to represent our brand. We're prepared to offer a generous contract and help him continue his educational journey." Rachel was silent for a moment, processing the proposal. On one hand, the offer was tempting: financial security, an opportunity for Liam to have access to cutting-edge educational tools. But on the other hand, it felt like another layer of pressure that she wasn't sure Liam was ready for. "I'll need to think about it," Rachel said, trying to keep her tone neutral. "Can you send me more details about the offer?" "Of course," Gregory replied. "I'll send over the information right away. I think you'll see just how much potential this partnership has for both Liam and his future." Rachel hung up the phone and stared at it for a long moment. Another opportunity, another decision to make. She didn't want to shut doors, but at what cost would this come? As the days passed, Rachel couldn't stop thinking about the proposal. She had always wanted what was best for Liam, and this was a significant opportunity that could set him up for life. Yet, each time she thought about it, she remembered his words: "I just want to do my puzzles." Liam was only 4. How much more of this world of fame and pressure could she let him experience before it started to erode his childhood? Was this really what he needed? Or was it simply what the world expected of him? One evening, after putting Liam to bed, Rachel sat alone in the living room, scrolling through the contract details that Gregory had sent her. It was a comprehensive offer, with lofty promises of educational advancement, financial gain, and a platform that would give Liam access to the best resources. But there was also a clause about constant media exposure, interviews, appearances, and a requirement for Liam to be the face of Future Tech Innovations. Rachel sighed, rubbing her temples. The more she read, the more she felt a knot form in her stomach. Liam wasn't just a child prodigy. He was becoming a commodity, something that others were eager to profit from. She didn't want to fall into the trap of pushing him into something he wasn't ready for. But how could she turn down an opportunity that could change his life? The next morning, Rachel decided to ask Liam once again how he felt about everything. She needed to know if he was even remotely interested in the direction his life was heading, or if he was simply following along without understanding the full weight of it. "Liam," Rachel said gently as they sat together on the couch, "I want to talk to you about something important." Liam looked up from his toy car, his big brown eyes full of curiosity. "What is it, Mom?" "There's a company that wants to work with you. They want you to be the face of a new learning program, where you'll get to share your puzzles with other kids and help them learn," Rachel explained, watching closely for his reaction. Liam's brow furrowed as he processed her words. "Do I have to do that, Mom?" Rachel's heart caught in her throat. "No, sweetheart. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I just want you to know what's being asked of you." Liam thought for a moment, his small fingers fiddling with the toy in his hand. "I just like doing my puzzles, Mom. I don't want to go on TV or do anything that makes me tired. I like it when it's just you and me." Rachel smiled softly, her eyes brimming with tears. How could she have even considered pushing him into something so big when all he wanted was the simplicity of his puzzles and his time with her? "Okay, Liam," Rachel said, her voice breaking slightly. "I promise we'll keep it simple. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do." Liam beamed at her, happy that his words had been heard. Rachel felt a sense of peace settle over her, even though she knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. She wasn't going to let anyone, no matter how enticing the offer, force her or Liam into a world he wasn't ready for. After another sleepless night of thinking things over, Rachel knew what she had to do. She called Gregory Daniels back. "Hello, Rachel," Gregory said, his voice bright with expectation. "Have you had a chance to review the proposal?" "I have," Rachel replied, her voice firm. "And after thinking about it, I've decided to decline the offer. Liam is just a child, and I want to make sure he has the space to grow and learn at his own pace without the pressure of being in the spotlight." Gregory was silent for a moment, clearly surprised by her decision. "I see. Well, thank you for your consideration. If you change your mind, the offer will still be on the table." Rachel hung up the phone with a sigh of relief. She had made the right decision for Liam, and although it wasn't an easy one, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. As the days passed, life slowly began to return to some semblance of normalcy. The media buzz eventually died down, and Rachel found a new sense of calm in knowing that she had protected Liam's childhood. But the world wasn't done with them yet. The challenges were far from over. Have you ever faced a moment where the world was pulling your child in a direction you weren't sure about? How did you make your decision? Share your story below, and stay tuned for the next chapter in Liam's journey. Just when Rachel thought they had weathered the worst, the storm came back in full force. This time, however, the attention wasn't just from the media, it was from a much more powerful and dangerous source. The world, it seemed, wasn't ready to let Liam go. It all started one quiet morning, as Rachel was sipping her coffee and Liam was busy playing with his puzzles. She was scrolling through her phone, catching up on some emails, when she noticed something unusual, a message from an anonymous account. "Your son is incredible. Don't let the world destroy him." The message was short and cryptic, but Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that it was just the beginning. She put her phone down, trying to focus on the normalcy of her day. But even as she tried to push the feeling aside, something about the message lingered in the back of her mind. By the time evening rolled around, Rachel had almost forgotten about the strange message. But then the calls began. First, it was a call from her lawyer, Karen, asking if she had heard about the latest developments in the story. Rachel's stomach dropped as she listened to Karen's voice on the other end of the line. "Rachel, you need to be careful. There's something happening behind the scenes that's starting to look dangerous. I've been hearing rumors about people who want to take Liam's abilities to the next level. And not in a way that benefits him." "What do you mean?" Rachel asked, her heart racing. "I'm hearing whispers that some very powerful people are interested in Liam," Karen said, her tone grave. "They see him as more than just a child prodigy. They see him as a tool, a way to manipulate the future. These people could be dangerous." Rachel's mind raced as she tried to process the gravity of Karen's words. It was one thing to deal with the usual pressure of fame, but this was something else entirely. Someone was trying to take control of Liam, and Rachel couldn't stand the thought of her son being caught in a game of power. "What should I do?" Rachel asked, feeling a cold wave of fear wash over her. "For now, I'd advise laying low," Karen said. "But stay vigilant. If you start noticing anything strange, let me know immediately. We may need to take legal action if things escalate." Rachel hung up the phone, her hands trembling. She glanced over at Liam, who was obliviously playing with his toy cars, lost in his own little world. He had no idea what was happening, and Rachel was determined to keep it that way. The next few days were filled with more strange messages, calls from unknown numbers, and odd coincidences. Someone was watching them. Rachel knew it, even if she couldn't see who it was. One afternoon, as they were leaving the park, Rachel noticed a black car parked across the street. It had been there for the last few days, always lurking in the background. She tried to ignore it, but the feeling of being watched had become impossible to shake. The tipping point came when Rachel received another message, this one even more ominous than the first. Leave town, or your son will be in danger. This time, there was no doubt in Rachel's mind. Whoever was behind these messages knew exactly who they were, where they lived, and they were not going to stop until they got what they wanted. Rachel knew she couldn't ignore the threats any longer. The pressure, the constant fear, this wasn't just about fame anymore. It was about protecting Liam from people who saw him as a prize to be won, not a child to be cherished. She called Karen again, her voice trembling with urgency. Karen, I need to leave. We need to get out of here, now. I agree, Karen replied quickly. I'll help you make arrangements. But listen, Rachel, this is bigger than just a few bad people. You need to get somewhere safe, somewhere off the radar. And you need to do it fast. Rachel agreed, and within hours, they were packing up their things. Liam didn't understand why they were leaving so suddenly, but he trusted her. He was still too young to understand the true danger they were in, and Rachel wasn't about to explain it to him in a way that would frighten him more. As they loaded their car with essentials, Rachel felt a surge of fear and determination. She wasn't about to let anyone take Liam away from her, not even for the promise of fame or fortune. This was about survival, and she would do whatever it took to keep him safe. Rachel drove through the night, heading for a small, remote town that she had visited once before. It wasn't on any major map, and it wasn't the kind of place that attracted attention. It was the perfect place to lay low and get out of the spotlight. Liam fell asleep in the back seat, oblivious to the whirlwind that had consumed their lives. Rachel kept glancing in the rearview mirror, her heart pounding with each mile. She didn't know how long they could stay hidden, but for the moment, this was the only place they were safe. As they arrived in the small town, Rachel felt a sense of temporary relief. The quiet, almost eerie calm of the place seemed like the perfect antidote to the chaos they had left behind. They rented a small house on the outskirts of town, far enough from the center to avoid drawing attention but close enough to get what they needed. That night, as Rachel tucked Liam into bed, she felt a strange sense of peace. They were safe, for now. But she knew this wouldn't last. The world that had been so eager to pull Liam into its grasp would eventually catch up to them. And when it did, Rachel would have to be ready. Over the next few weeks, Rachel tried to adjust to life in the small town, keeping Liam's routines as normal as possible. She didn't let him know how dangerous things had become, keeping up the facade of normalcy for his sake. But inside, the anxiety never stopped. Every phone call, every knock on the door, every car that passed by, she was always on edge. One day, as Rachel was walking Liam to the small park in town, she spotted something that made her heart stop. A black car, the same one that had been lurking around their old neighborhood, was parked at the end of the street. It was here. And they were coming for Liam. Rachel had been living on edge for days, her heart constantly in her throat. The sight of the black car parked at the end of the street had confirmed her worst fears. The people who had been watching them were here, closer than ever. It had been a quiet morning, the kind where the world seemed to slow down just a little, offering the illusion of peace. Liam had been playing in the small backyard of their rented house, oblivious to the danger that lurked just outside their little bubble of safety. Rachel had just finished a cup of coffee when she heard the sound of a car engine approaching. She froze. The black car. It was back. Rachel quickly glanced out the window. The vehicle wasn't parked in its usual spot at the end of the street, but it was parked just a few houses down, idling ominously. She could see a man sitting inside, his face obscured by the tinted windows. The longer she stared, the more her instincts screamed that they were being watched. Rachel's pulse quickened, and she grabbed her phone from the kitchen counter. She quickly dialed Karen's number, her fingers trembling. "Karen," Rachel whispered, trying to keep her voice steady, "they're here. The black car, it's parked down the street. What do I do?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before Karen spoke. "Stay calm, Rachel. They know where you are, but they don't know exactly what you're doing. You need to stay out of sight, keep Liam inside. I'm going to make some calls. We'll figure this out. Just stay safe. Rachel ended the call, her mind racing. The weight of the moment crashed down on her, and for the first time in a long while, she felt utterly helpless. She couldn't let Liam get caught in the middle of whatever game these people were playing. But the question was, who were these people? What did they want with her son? Minutes later, as Rachel tried to steady her nerves, she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching the front door. Someone was coming. Her heart stopped as she crouched low, peeking through the blinds. She could see a tall figure standing at the edge of the driveway, his face covered by a dark hood. He was scanning the house, looking for something. Or someone. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She felt the weight of every decision she had made to protect Liam fall heavily on her shoulders. She had to act fast. She couldn't let them see Liam. Not now. Not ever. Her first instinct was to lock all the doors and windows, but she knew that wouldn't keep him out. These people were relentless, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. There was only one option left. She grabbed Liam's hand, pulling him toward the back of the house. Liam, we're going to play a game, okay? Just like hide and seek. We need to be really quiet. Liam looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes. He didn't ask questions. He never did. He just nodded, his small hand gripping hers as she led him into the back bedroom. Rachel quickly closed the door behind them and motioned for Liam to hide under the bed. He hesitated for a moment, but Rachel gave him a reassuring smile. It's just a game. We're safe here. Liam nodded and crawled under the bed, his small body barely visible in the dark corner of the room. Rachel turned off the lights and sat on the floor beside the bed, her breath shallow as she waited for the inevitable. Seconds felt like hours. Each sound, the crunch of gravel outside, the distant hum of an engine starting up, made Rachel's heart pound in her chest. She was waiting for the knock. For the moment when they would find out they weren't alone. And then it came. A sharp knock at the front door, followed by another, then silence. Rachel's heart skipped a beat as she pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. She could hear the man's footsteps move away from the door, his movements slow, methodical. He was checking the perimeter of the house. Rachel's gut twisted with fear as she glanced at Liam, who was still hiding under the bed, his face pale but composed. Suddenly, the front door creaked open. Rachel's blood ran cold. She heard muffled voices as someone stepped inside. The intruder had a key. They were inside. Rachel's mind raced. She had no choice now but to confront them. Her hand instinctively reached for the phone in her pocket. But before she could dial, the bedroom door creaked open, and a figure appeared in the doorway. A tall man in a black jacket, his face hidden behind dark sunglasses, stood in the threshold. He looked almost out of place, too calm, too deliberate for someone who had broken into her home. He wasn't here for just any reason, he was here for something, or someone. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest. She had no plan, no way out. She had to buy time. What do you want? Rachel asked, her voice shaking but firm. Who are you? The man tilted his head slightly, as if studying her. He spoke in a deep, steady voice. I'm not here to hurt you, Rachel. I'm here to talk. We know about your son, and we know what he's capable of. You don't have to run anymore. Rachel stood up, her muscles tense, ready to defend Liam if needed. You don't know anything. You don't get to take him. The man's lips curled into a slight, emotionless smile. It's not about taking him, Rachel. It's about helping him reach his full potential. The world is waiting for someone like him, and we're the ones who can help him unlock it. Not at the cost of his childhood, Rachel shot back, her voice growing stronger. I won't let you turn him into a machine for your own purposes. The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a step forward, closing the distance between them. Rachel's breath caught in her throat, and she instinctively stepped back, her heart racing. "We don't want to force you into anything, Rachel. But if you refuse, things might get difficult." His voice was low, filled with an underlying threat. Rachel gritted her teeth. "I'll never let you use him." He paused for a moment, then nodded slowly. "We'll see. We'll be watching." With that, the man turned and walked out of the room, disappearing down the hallway. Rachel rushed to the window, peeking through the blinds. The black car was still parked at the end of the street, but the man had disappeared. Rachel felt a strange calm wash over her as she closed the blinds and sat down next to Liam. He was still hiding under the bed, his wide eyes staring up at her, full of questions she didn't know how to answer. "Mom?" Liam whispered. Rachel scooped him up, holding him tightly. "We're safe, honey. For now." But in her heart, she knew this was just the beginning. They were no longer just a family trying to stay out of the spotlight. They were now a target, and the people who were after them would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. Rachel couldn't shake the image of the man in the black jacket. His words echoed in her mind as she sat in the dimly lit living room, Liam asleep in her arms. The confrontation had shaken her more than she cared to admit, but what truly terrified her was the realization that the threat wasn't just about money, fame, or power, it was about control. They weren't just after Liam's abilities, they were after his future. And if they got their hands on him, they would never let him go. Rachel had spent the last few hours pacing the small house, her mind whirling with 1,000 thoughts. The moment she had tried to put some distance between herself and the people after them, they had found her again. They had the resources, the connections, and now it was clear, they weren't going to stop. Liam stirred in her arms, his little fingers brushing against her face. Rachel kissed his forehead and whispered, "I'm not going to let them take you. I promise." The weight of that promise pressed down on her chest, and she knew there was only one thing left to do. She had to get Liam out of here. But where? Rachel had been putting off making the call, knowing that once she did, there would be no going back. But with the man's warning still fresh in her mind, she couldn't afford to wait any longer. She grabbed her phone, dialing Karen's number. It rang twice before Karen's voice came through the line. "Rachel, what's going on? Is everything okay?" Rachel took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "No, Karen. It's not okay. They know where we are. They came here. They tried to talk to me. They're not going to stop until they get what they want." There was a brief pause, and Rachel could hear Karen's sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Damn. I was afraid of this. They don't give up easily, do they?" "No," Rachel replied, her voice breaking. "I need your help. I need to get Liam out of here. I can't keep him safe if I stay here any longer. We have to disappear. Can you help us?" Karen's voice was calm, but Rachel could hear the urgency underneath. "I can help. I'll set something up. You need to pack your things, get out of there, and head to the location I send you. It's a safe house. No one will know where you are." Rachel nodded, even though she knew Karen couldn't see her. "Thank you. I don't know what else to do." "You're doing the right thing, Rachel. Don't worry. I'll make sure everything is in place. Just don't leave until you hear from me." Rachel hung up the phone and turned to look at Liam, still sound asleep in her arms. She gently set him down on the couch, making sure he was comfortable. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself a moment of respite, though it was fleeting. This was it. The moment when her life, and Liam's, would change forever. As the night wore on, Rachel began to pack. She moved quickly, her hands shaking as she gathered what little they could carry, clothes, essentials, a few sentimental items that would remind her of their past life. But she couldn't help but feel the weight of each decision. Every item she placed into the bag felt like one more step away from the life they had known, one more piece of the puzzle slipping into place. Rachel glanced at the clock. It was getting late, and she had no time to waste. Karen had promised to send her the details of the safe house soon, but Rachel wasn't sure how much longer they had before the people after them made another move. She heard a soft knock at the door, a sound that sent a cold shiver down her spine. For a brief moment, Rachel froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Was it them? She slowly approached the door, peeking through the peephole. No one was standing there. But there, on the ground, was a small envelope, sealed with a wax stamp. Rachel's breath caught in her throat as she bent down to pick it up. She opened the envelope carefully, pulling out a piece of paper with a single sentence written in neat, black ink. "We know where you are. You can't hide forever." A chill ran down her spine. It was a warning. A threat. The message was clear, they knew exactly where she was, and they weren't going to stop until they had what they wanted. Rachel's hands trembled as she crumpled the paper and tossed it into the trash. She couldn't waste time worrying about that now. They had no choice but to leave. By the time Karen called back with the location details, Rachel had packed everything they could carry. Liam was still asleep on the couch, oblivious to the danger that was closing in around them. Rachel's heart ached as she looked at him, wishing she could shield him from the world, protect him from the chaos that had been thrust upon their lives. "Rachel," Karen's voice came through the phone, "I've set up a place for you. It's about 4 hours away from where you are now. It's secure, but you need to move fast. Don't stop for anything. And make sure no one follows you." Rachel nodded, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "Got it. I'm leaving now." "Good luck," Karen said before hanging up. Rachel took one last look around the house, her heart heavy. This was the life they had built together, and now it was time to leave it all behind. She gently woke Liam, who rubbed his eyes and yawned, still half asleep. "Mom, where are we going?" he asked, his small voice tinged with confusion. Rachel smiled softly, brushing a lock of hair from his face. "We're going on an adventure, honey. A very special one." Liam's eyes brightened with excitement. "An adventure? I like adventures." Rachel chuckled, though it was tinged with sadness. This wasn't the kind of adventure she had envisioned for him, but it was the only one she could give him now. As they loaded into the car and pulled away from the house, Rachel felt a surge of relief. They were leaving their old life behind. The black car, the constant threats, it was all a part of the past now. She drove through the darkened streets, her mind constantly scanning for any signs of danger. But the road ahead was unknown. The safe house Karen had arranged was their only hope. Rachel didn't know what awaited them there, but she knew that no matter what, she would fight for Liam's safety. She glanced at him in the rearview mirror, his face still full of innocent curiosity. "This is just the beginning, sweetie," she whispered to herself, the weight of her promise still heavy in her chest. "And we're going to make it through together." The drive had been long, stretching into the early hours of the morning, but as Rachel pulled up to the small, unassuming house nestled in the woods, a faint sense of relief washed over her. It was isolated, just what they needed. No one would expect them to be here. Liam had fallen asleep on the ride, his small body curled up in the back seat, his breathing soft and even. Rachel took a deep breath as she parked the car, the engine's hum fading into the quiet of the countryside. She gazed out at the house, its white paint peeling slightly, the overgrown yard giving it a sense of abandonment. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, for now. Rachel stepped out of the car, her legs stiff from the long drive, and opened the back door to wake Liam. She brushed his messy hair from his forehead, her fingers lingering for just a moment longer than necessary. He stirred and blinked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Are we here, Mom?" Liam asked in a small, groggy voice. Rachel smiled gently, lifting him from his seat. "We're here, sweetheart. This is where we'll be safe for a while." Liam yawned and rubbed his eyes. Safe. I like safe. I like safe too, Rachel murmured as she carried him inside. The interior of the house was simple, Spartan, almost. The walls were a dull beige, and the furniture was sparse, mostly consisting of old pieces that looked like they had been forgotten by time. The place had the scent of dust and disuse, but there was something comforting about it. The calmness. The quiet. It was a far cry from the constant sense of danger that had been hanging over them for the past few weeks. Rachel placed Liam on the couch, then began checking the house, inspecting every corner, every window, every locked door. She knew better than to assume they were completely safe just because they were in a different place. The people who were after them were resourceful, relentless. They would find a way to track them down, and Rachel had no illusions about the reality of their situation. After checking the perimeter, Rachel walked to the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water. Her hands trembled slightly as she brought the glass to her lips. She hadn't realized just how exhausted she was until now. The fear, the constant running, the worry, it had taken a toll on her. She leaned against the counter and closed her eyes for a moment, letting the coolness of the glass settle in her hands. She tried to push away the lingering thought that had been gnawing at the back of her mind since she left their old home. How long would they have before the danger found them again? A sharp knock at the door startled her, and her heart leapt into her throat. Her instincts took over. She set the glass down, her eyes darting to Liam, who was still sitting on the couch, playing with a toy car he had found. Rachel's breath quickened. Was it them? Another knock. Louder this time. Rachel's pulse raced as she slowly approached the door. Her mind was already racing through scenarios. Who could it be? Was it someone sent to check on them? Or had they finally tracked them down? She glanced through the small peephole. A man stood outside, holding a small package in his hand. He looked to be in his mid-40s, with a dark, neatly trimmed beard and a military-style jacket. His demeanor was calm, but there was something about his presence that didn't sit right with her. Rachel hesitated. She hadn't expected anyone. Had Karen arranged for someone to meet them? She wasn't sure, but she couldn't take any chances. "Who's there?" she called out, keeping her voice steady. The man on the other side of the door took a step back, his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "My name is Jack. I'm here to make sure you're safe." Rachel didn't lower her guard. "Safe? Who sent you?" "I've been sent by Karen," Jack said. "She told me you'd be here. I've got something for you." Rachel's heart skipped a beat at the mention of Karen's name. She didn't know whether to trust this man, but the mention of Karen made her lower her guard, just slightly. "I'm coming out," she said after a beat. She slowly opened the door, her eyes scanning the area around the man for any signs of danger. He was standing on the porch, holding the package firmly in his hands. Jack stepped inside when Rachel didn't make any further moves to stop him. "Karen sent me to check on you. She said you might need supplies, food. I've got what you need." Rachel eyed the package suspiciously. "What kind of supplies?" "Just the basics. Some clothes, a few essentials. It's all I could get on short notice." "Karen thought you'd need something more than what you packed," he explained. Rachel's suspicion was palpable, but she couldn't afford to turn down anything that might help. She stepped aside, motioning for him to come in. "Thank you," Rachel said, though the words felt hollow. She still wasn't sure about this man, but she had to trust that Karen had vetted him. Jack set the package down on the small kitchen table and began to unpack it. Inside were clothes, toiletries, and some non-perishable food items, nothing too extravagant, but it was a relief to have something. The thought of being stuck with nothing but the few things she had packed was overwhelming. As Jack worked, Rachel glanced over at Liam, who was sitting quietly on the couch, his little fingers playing with the toy car in his lap. He seemed oblivious to the tension in the room, which was just as well. She didn't want him to see her worried, not when he was already under so much stress. So, what's your plan? Rachel asked, keeping her voice calm, trying to engage Jack in a conversation. How do we stay safe here? Jack finished unloading the last of the supplies and looked over at her. This place is as safe as it gets, for now. No one knows about it except Karen and me. But I'm going to keep an eye on things. You don't have to worry about being followed, at least not right away. Rachel nodded, but the unease in her chest wouldn't go away. She had no way of knowing if Jack could be trusted. All she could do was hope that Karen had made the right choice in sending him. There's one more thing, Jack said, breaking her thoughts. There's a man looking for you. He's been asking questions about you, about Liam. I'm not sure who he is, but he's close. Rachel's blood ran cold. She had feared this moment was coming. They had made it to the safe house, but even here, there was no guarantee that they would be free from danger. Whoever was after them was relentless, and it seemed like they were getting closer. Rachel took a deep breath and steeled herself. Then we'll be ready. Jack gave a small nod. I'll be here if you need anything. Just keep your head down and stay out of sight. As Jack left the house, Rachel felt the weight of the situation settle back on her shoulders. They were safe for the moment, but the unknowns were still there. What if the man Jack had mentioned was closer than they realized? What if their hiding place was already compromised? Rachel sat down beside Liam, who had fallen asleep once again. His small chest rose and fell with each peaceful breath, and for a moment, Rachel allowed herself to relax. But deep down, she knew this peace would be short-lived. The people who were after them weren't going to stop. They'd never stop until they had Liam. And that thought kept her awake long into the night. Rachel barely slept that night. The silence of the woods, the isolation of the house, everything that had once seemed like a blessing now felt like a trap. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind rattling the windows, made her stomach churn with unease. She kept thinking back to what Jack had said. Someone was looking for them. And despite Karen's assurance that the safe house was secure, Rachel knew that nothing was truly safe. Not with people like them, relentless, determined, and too powerful for Rachel to fight on her own. Liam had woken up around dawn, and Rachel had spent the morning keeping him occupied, trying to give him some semblance of normalcy. But the unease in her heart only grew. By mid-afternoon, the tension had reached a boiling point. Rachel was sitting on the couch, glancing through the window, scanning the road for any signs of trouble. Liam was playing with the toy car Jack had brought, blissfully unaware of the threat looming over them. Then, the unmistakable sound of a vehicle's engine cut through the otherwise peaceful silence. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She stood up quickly, moving toward the window, her pulse racing. A black SUV was parked down the road, half a mile away, just beyond the curve. It wasn't a car she recognized. She watched as the engine turned off, and two men stepped out. Her heart sank. They weren't just here by chance. This wasn't a random visitor. Someone had tracked them here. Rachel's mind raced, adrenaline surging through her as she quickly assessed her options. She couldn't stay here. She had no idea how long they'd been watching the house, or if they were planning to stake it out for hours, but one thing was clear: if she stayed, she would put Liam in danger. She glanced over at the door to the small bedroom, where their few belongings were hastily packed. In the kitchen, the phone was charging, and Rachel's thoughts turned to Karen. If anyone could help now, it was her. Liam, completely unaware of the growing danger, looked up at Rachel. "Mom, can we go outside? I want to play." Rachel's throat tightened as she forced a smile. She couldn't let Liam see her panic. "Not right now, sweetie. We need to stay inside for a little while." Liam pouted but didn't protest, too engrossed in his toy car to notice the change in his mother's demeanor. Rachel moved quickly, grabbing their bags and shoving them under the couch. She then rushed to the kitchen, where she grabbed the phone from the charger. She needed to call Karen, and fast. As her fingers trembled, she dialed the number, praying Karen would pick up. The phone rang several times before Karen's voice came through the line. "Rachel? Is everything okay?" "I don't think so," Rachel replied, her voice shaking. "There's a car outside. I think they've found us." There was a brief silence on the other end before Karen spoke. "How many people are there? What kind of car?" "I don't know. It's an SUV. 2 men, but I don't recognize them," Rachel said, trying to keep her voice steady. "What should I do?" "Listen to me," Karen's voice was firm. "Do not engage with them. You need to leave the house immediately. The place is compromised." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? I thought this place was supposed to be safe." "It was, but they're good at what they do. This place was a temporary measure. You need to get out of there. There's a backup location, head north, to the old cabin. It's about an hour away. I'll meet you there. Do you understand?" Rachel felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "North? The old cabin? It's in the middle of nowhere. Are you sure?" "Rachel, you don't have time to question this. Just trust me. Take Liam and go. Now." Rachel didn't hesitate. She ended the call, grabbing Liam's hand as she moved toward the door. She felt a surge of panic. This wasn't the plan. They were supposed to be safe. But as she looked through the window again, the men were still standing outside, talking to each other in low tones. She couldn't wait any longer. Rachel hurried to the bedroom and grabbed the bags they had packed, slinging them over her shoulder. She tried to keep calm, to mask her fear as best as she could for Liam's sake. "Sweetie, we need to go. We're going on another adventure," she said, forcing a smile as she knelt beside him. Liam looked up from his car, his eyes wide with excitement. "Adventure?" "Yeah," Rachel said, her heart aching as she looked at him. She couldn't tell him the truth. That they were running. That their lives were in danger. He was too young to understand. "But we need to be very quiet, okay?" Liam nodded, his expression turning serious. "Okay, Mom." Rachel held her breath as she opened the door and stepped out onto the porch, keeping her movements as quiet as possible. She could hear the men talking just outside, their voices muffled but growing louder. Rachel's heart raced in her chest as she motioned for Liam to follow her. They moved down the small path, away from the main road, towards the car. The minutes felt like hours. As they reached the car, Rachel turned around to check one last time. Her heart dropped into her stomach when she saw one of the men standing near the edge of the property, his eyes scanning the surroundings. They were closer than she had realized. Rachel quickly ushered Liam into the car, her mind focused on one thing, getting away. She jumped into the driver's seat, started the engine, and peeled out of the driveway, not daring to look back. Rachel pushed the accelerator down, speeding down the dirt road, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. The SUV was still parked in front of the house, and she didn't know if the men had seen them leave yet. But she wasn't taking any chances. As the car bounced along the rough road, Rachel's mind raced. Where was the backup cabin? She had to trust Karen, but part of her wondered, was this all part of the plan? Or had they been set up? The road ahead was winding and narrow, leading them deep into the woods. Rachel tried to steady her breathing, but her pulse was racing. She could feel the eyes of the men on her, even though they hadn't been seen. The danger was real now. It wasn't just a matter of hiding anymore. It was a race to escape. As the trees began to thin and the road opened up to a larger stretch, Rachel's anxiety grew. Had they followed them? Was she leading them straight into a trap? But she had no choice. She had to keep moving. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees as Rachel sped down the winding forest road. Her hands were still gripping the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white with the strain. Liam, quiet for the most part, was staring out the window, the faintest hint of confusion in his eyes. "Mom, where are we going?" he asked, his voice soft but with an edge of worry. Rachel glanced in the rearview mirror, but there was nothing in sight. No other cars. No sign of the men from the SUV. Yet, she could feel the weight of their presence, like a dark cloud hanging over her. The silence was eerie, but she didn't dare slow down. She didn't trust that they were truly gone. "We're going to a place where we'll be safe, honey," she said, forcing a calmness she didn't feel. "It's just a little farther." Liam seemed to accept the answer, but Rachel could tell he didn't fully understand. He wasn't old enough to grasp what they were running from, or why. And that broke her heart. Every time she saw him confused, it made the weight of the danger they were in feel even heavier. The road began to narrow, the trees closing in around them. Rachel's headlights flickered on, casting an eerie glow over the thick woods. The drive felt endless, but after what seemed like forever, she saw a clearing ahead. The shape of a small cabin appeared in the distance, surrounded by trees. It looked almost abandoned, nestled deep within the woods. Rachel let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. They had made it. They were here. The cabin looked exactly as Rachel remembered it from her childhood, a small, modest building, with a porch that creaked under the weight of time. The windows were old and slightly cracked, but it was sturdy. Solid. Everything she needed it to be. As Rachel pulled up to the cabin, she turned off the engine and glanced at Liam. He was still staring out the window, his face barely visible in the fading light. She wanted to tell him it was going to be okay, but she didn't have the words. She didn't know if it was going to be okay. "We're here," Rachel said softly, trying to sound reassuring. "This is where we'll stay for a while." Liam didn't say anything. He just nodded, though his eyes betrayed a growing unease. Rachel opened the door and stepped outside, feeling the cool night air on her face. It was quiet here, but she couldn't help the feeling that it was the calm before the storm. As Rachel moved toward the door, she noticed something strange. The front porch was littered with small twigs and debris, as if someone had been there recently. But that couldn't be possible. The cabin had been abandoned for years, no one had used it in a long time. Her heart skipped a beat. Had someone already been here? She approached the door cautiously, hand on the handle, but as she tried to open it, the door wouldn't budge. It was locked. That was odd. The last time she had been here, the lock was broken. She had never bothered to fix it. Rachel tried the handle again, but it didn't move. "Mom." Liam's voice was small behind her. She turned to see him standing by the car, clutching his stuffed bear tightly. "It's okay, sweetie," Rachel said, trying to mask the panic that was creeping into her chest. "Just stay close." Rachel walked around the side of the cabin, scanning the area for any signs of life, but it was all still. The trees were quiet. The air felt thick, as if it was holding its breath. She reached the back of the cabin and tried the window, locked, too. Now, Rachel was starting to feel the unease crawl up her spine. This wasn't right. Someone had been here recently, and the lock should have been broken. She was sure of it. Suddenly, a sound broke through the silence, a soft crunch of leaves. Rachel spun around, her heart racing, but she didn't see anyone. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Just as Rachel was about to call out for Liam, she heard the distinct sound of footsteps behind her. She whirled around, only to come face to face with a figure emerging from the shadows. A man. Tall, with a heavy coat and a scarf wrapped around his neck, his face obscured by the dim light. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't good. She instinctively took a step back, putting herself between the man and Liam, who was still standing by the car. "Who are you?" Rachel demanded, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. She wasn't sure if she could trust anyone anymore. The man didn't immediately respond. Instead, he took a step closer, his eyes scanning her face with an almost unsettling intensity. He had a calm, composed air about him, but something in his gaze made Rachel's skin crawl. "My name is Marcus," the man finally said, his voice smooth and cold. "And I'm here to help." Rachel's gut twisted. She didn't know this man, and there was no way in hell she was letting him get any closer to her son. "I don't need your help," Rachel said, her voice firm, though her hands trembled. "Who are you really?" Marcus smiled, a thin, tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I know who you are, Rachel. And I know who Liam is. I know what's been happening. I'm not your enemy, but I'm not here to make friends either." Rachel's stomach churned. The way he spoke, it was like he knew more than he should. He was too calm. Too collected. "Then why are you here?" Rachel demanded, keeping her distance. "How do you know my name?" Marcus took another step closer, and this time Rachel didn't back away. She was done running. "I've been keeping an eye on you," he said, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. "You've been a little harder to track than I anticipated, but now that I've found you, I need to know something." Rachel's breath caught in her throat, her body tense with fear. "What do you want?" Marcus leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Where is the boy's father?" Rachel froze. Her heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing. She wasn't ready to answer that question. She never would be. "I don't know," Rachel said quickly, her voice rising with panic. "I haven't seen him in years." But the man didn't seem convinced. His eyes narrowed. "You can lie to me, Rachel. But not to yourself." Before she could say anything else, Marcus turned abruptly and walked toward the woods, his footsteps echoing through the night. "Don't think this is over," he called over his shoulder. "We'll be back. And we'll find out what you're hiding." Rachel stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. Her mind was spinning. Who was this man? What did he want from her? But one thing was certain, she wasn't safe. Not here. Not anywhere. As Marcus disappeared into the woods, Rachel turned to Liam, her heart heavy with fear. She knew what she had to do. They couldn't stay here. Not even for another minute. Rachel rushed to the car, pulling Liam inside. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have a destination. All she knew was that they had to keep moving. The drive away from the cabin was tense and silent. Rachel's mind raced, and her heart pounded in her chest as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles aching from the pressure. The darkness of the forest seemed to close in around them, and every twisting turn felt like a step deeper into unknown territory. Liam was unusually quiet in the back seat, and Rachel could feel his confusion hanging in the air. He didn't understand the danger, didn't grasp the severity of the situation. To him, the world was still full of innocent wonders. But Rachel couldn't help feeling like she was leading him deeper into a nightmare he wasn't ready for. "Mom." Liam's voice broke through her thoughts. She glanced in the rearview mirror and saw his wide, innocent eyes. "Yeah, sweetie. Are we going to be okay?" he asked, his small voice carrying a weight she wasn't prepared for. Rachel's heart clenched at the question. She didn't know the answer. The truth was, she didn't feel okay. She didn't feel safe. But she couldn't let Liam know that. He needed to believe that everything would be fine, even if Rachel wasn't sure herself. "We're going to be fine," she said, trying to inject as much confidence into her voice as possible. "We're just going to keep moving forward. Together." Liam didn't say anything more, but Rachel could feel the weight of his stare on her back as he sat quietly, his little hands clutching his stuffed bear for comfort. The road twisted and turned through the dense forest, the headlights cutting through the blackness, but no matter how far they drove, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The tension in her chest hadn't subsided since Marcus's cryptic warning, and every rustle of the trees, every shadow in her peripheral vision, made her jump. She didn't trust the cabin anymore. She didn't trust Marcus. And most of all, she didn't trust herself. She had been running for so long, and yet it felt like they were only circling deeper into danger. She needed answers. She needed to know who was after them and why. Suddenly, as Rachel turned another sharp bend in the road, her headlights illuminated a small, worn-down sign. It was partially obscured by overgrown branches, but Rachel could make out the faint letters. Rachel's eyes narrowed. She had never heard of Old Oak Path before. It didn't appear on any of the maps she'd studied before this escape. It was an odd detour, one she hadn't planned. But something inside her felt compelled to follow it. There was something about the path that seemed familiar. She slowed the car, considering her options. She could turn around, go back to the main road, and keep driving, but that would only take them further from the safety she needed. Or she could take a chance on this unknown road. Trust her instincts. After all, they had brought her this far. "Okay, sweetie, we're going to follow this path," she said, her voice a bit firmer now. "Stay close, all right?" Liam nodded without question, still holding on to his bear. Rachel's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror again, her senses heightened. She knew she couldn't let her guard down. As Rachel drove further down the path, the trees around them grew denser, their branches intertwining above them like a canopy. The air felt cooler, heavier, as if they were descending into some forgotten part of the forest. The road became bumpier, the car jolting with every pothole. The deeper they went, the more isolated they became. There were no signs of civilization here, no houses, no farms, no cars. Just the endless expanse of the forest stretching out on either side. Rachel's mind was on high alert. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that they were walking into a trap. But she couldn't turn back now. Not when there was nowhere else to go. After what felt like an eternity, the road opened up into a small clearing. At the center of the clearing stood a large, ancient oak tree, gnarled and twisted, its massive roots spreading out across the ground like the fingers of a giant hand. And beneath that tree, almost hidden in the shadows, was a small cabin. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just any cabin. She recognized it. She hadn't seen it in years, but she remembered it all the same. This was the place. The cabin was old, its wooden structure weathered and faded by time. It looked abandoned, just like the last one. But there was something about it that made Rachel feel uneasy. The memories of her childhood here were bittersweet, tied to a past she had long since tried to escape. Rachel parked the car a few feet away from the cabin, her hands trembling as she turned off the engine. She didn't know what she was hoping for, but she felt a deep, primal pull toward this place. It was almost like she was meant to find it. Like the forest had led them here. "Mom, are we staying here?" Liam asked, his voice small, almost frightened. Rachel hesitated. I don't know yet, sweetie," she replied, though the words felt hollow. She couldn't explain it to him, not yet. Liam unbuckled his seatbelt and jumped out of the car, eager to explore. Rachel followed him slowly, her heart heavy with a sense of foreboding. The door to the cabin was as old and weathered as the rest of the structure, but it seemed oddly inviting, as if it had been waiting for Rachel to return. She reached for the doorknob, but before she could touch it, the door creaked open on its own. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't normal. The door should have been locked, should have been sealed shut. But it was open, inviting them in, as if it was waiting for them. She hesitated, glancing at Liam, who had already started walking toward the door, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Rachel rushed to catch up with him. "No, Liam, wait," she said, her voice sharp with panic. But it was too late. He had already stepped inside. Inside, the cabin was dark and cold, the air musty and stale. Rachel took a step forward, squinting in the dim light. The interior was mostly empty, save for some old furniture covered in sheets and dust. But what caught her eye wasn't the furniture, it was the walls. The walls were lined with old photographs. They were black and white, some faded with age, others almost too clear, too sharp. Rachel's pulse quickened as she recognized some of the faces in the photographs. Her heart began to race. These weren't just random photos. Some of them were of her. Of Rachel, as a child. But it wasn't just her. Liam's face was in some of the pictures, too. Rachel froze. There was no mistake. These weren't just old memories. They were part of her past, a past that had been buried for so long, one she never wanted to face again. But there it was, staring back at her from the walls of this forgotten cabin. And then, in the corner of the room, she saw something that made her blood run cold, a wooden chest, partially open, as if someone had been rummaging through it recently. Rachel approached it slowly, her hands shaking as she reached for the lid. When she opened it, the contents were exactly what she feared. Inside was a stack of old files, documents, photographs, and pieces of paper. They were all related to her past, her family, and Liam. And at the very top of the stack was a single, familiar photo. A photo of her with a man she thought she'd never see again. The man who had disappeared years ago. Her husband. The one who had left. The one who had vanished without a trace. And now, it seemed, he was the key to everything. Rachel stood frozen in the dim light of the cabin, her fingers trembling as she held the photograph. The image was clear in her mind now, a younger version of her, standing beside a man she thought she'd never see again. The man who had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind nothing but questions, and a gaping hole in her life. Her husband, Jason. But this wasn't just any photo. It was one of the last photos ever taken of them together before he left, before he vanished into the night. She hadn't even known it had existed. How could she not have remembered it? How could she not have known that this man, this stranger, was somehow tied to the puzzle of her life? Her breath caught in her throat. The questions multiplied with every passing second. What was Jason involved in? Why had he disappeared? And what was his connection to Liam? The room seemed to close in around her, the weight of the past pressing down hard on her chest. She hadn't wanted to think about Jason in years. His disappearance was one of the things she buried deep inside herself, hoping she would never have to confront it. But now, with the evidence staring her in the face, she had no choice. The photo was just the tip of the iceberg. Rachel pushed it aside, her heart racing as she sifted through the stack of documents beneath it. There were files on everything. Bank accounts she didn't recognize. Names of people she had never heard of. Places she knew nothing about. But it was all connected. Every single document was part of a larger puzzle. And the more Rachel read, the more she realized how little she truly knew about the man she had once loved. She didn't know what she was expecting, but it certainly wasn't this. Jason had been involved in something dangerous, something that could cost them everything. One document caught her eye, a list of names, each one paired with an address and a series of numbers that looked like coded messages. There was a note attached, written in her husband's hand, though Rachel didn't recognize the handwriting at first. If anything happens to me, follow this. It's bigger than you think. Rachel's blood ran cold as she read those words. It sounded like a warning. A message left behind for her, as though Jason had known something was coming. Something that would force him to disappear. "Mom, is everything okay?" Liam's voice broke her concentration, and Rachel turned to see him standing in the doorway, his wide eyes full of concern. Rachel's heart clenched as she looked at her son. He had no idea what they were involved in now. To him, the cabin was just another place to explore, another adventure. But she knew better. She knew that everything had changed the moment they stepped inside. "I'm fine, honey," she said, forcing a smile. "Just a lot of things to think about." Liam didn't seem convinced. He walked closer to her, his little hand tugging at the sleeve of her jacket. "What's in the box?" Rachel hesitated, not sure what to say. But her son had always been perceptive. He could tell when something was off. She couldn't keep this from him forever, not when the truth was already in their lives. "This is part of my past, Liam," she said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's something I need to figure out, something that will help us." Liam didn't ask any more questions, but his brow furrowed slightly, as if he understood that something big was unfolding. He stayed close to her, as if seeking reassurance, and Rachel took a deep breath. She couldn't protect him from the truth forever, but she could shield him from the worst of it, at least for now. Rachel turned back to the stack of papers. Her eyes scanned the list of names again, and this time, one name stood out above the rest: Marcus Winters. Her heart skipped a beat. It couldn't be the same Marcus, could it? The man who had appeared at the cabin. The man who had warned her that he was keeping an eye on them. Rachel felt a cold shiver run down her spine. If this was the same Marcus Winters, then the entire situation was far more complicated than she had imagined. The photograph, the warning, the files, they all pointed to something far bigger than anything she could have guessed. She picked up another file, this one labeled Operation Blackthorn. Her hands shook as she opened it, revealing a series of diagrams and maps that seemed to trace routes and locations Rachel didn't recognize. There were notes written in the margins, and when she read them, her stomach churned. Blackthorn is a network. It has its fingers in everything: government contracts, private companies, secret operations. We've been compromised. They know too much. Rachel's head spun as she tried to process the information. Blackthorn. What was it? Was this the organization Jason had been involved with? Was this the reason he had vanished? There was no way to know for sure, but one thing was clear: Jason had gotten in deep. He had gotten tangled up in something he couldn't escape. And now, Rachel and Liam were in danger because of it. Rachel's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. She froze, her heart racing. Who could that be? Was it Marcus? Or was someone else tracking them? Liam tugged at her sleeve, his small voice whispering, "Mom, who's there?" "I don't know, sweetie," she replied, her mind racing. "Stay here." Rachel grabbed a flashlight from her bag and quietly approached the door. She peeked through the small crack, but all she saw was the night, the trees swaying in the wind. No one was there. Or was there? Her breath caught when she saw something in the distance. A shadow moving between the trees. It was too far away to make out details, but it was unmistakable. Someone was out there. Rachel's pulse quickened as she turned back to the cabin. She needed to get out, now. "Liam, get your shoes on. We're leaving," she said, her voice urgent. Liam's eyes widened with fear. "What's happening, Mom?" "I don't know yet, sweetie, but we have to go," Rachel said, trying to keep her voice calm. She grabbed his hand and led him toward the door, her mind racing as she tried to think of their next move. Just as they reached the door, a voice called out from the darkness. "Rachel." It was Marcus. Rachel's heart sank. She knew it was only a matter of time before he found them. But now, she had no choice but to face him. She stepped out onto the porch, Liam clutching her hand tightly. The shadowy figure of Marcus stood at the edge of the clearing, his tall frame barely visible in the darkness. "You should have listened to me," Marcus said, his voice cold and calm. "You can't keep running, Rachel. This is bigger than you." Rachel stood her ground, the flashlight trembling in her hand. "What do you want from us, Marcus?" "I want you to understand," he replied. "Jason's disappearance was no accident. And what he left behind is far more dangerous than you realize." Rachel's breath caught. "What are you talking about?" But before Marcus could answer, the sound of approaching footsteps broke the tension. The shadows around them seemed to move. Rachel's heart pounded. Whoever else was out there was closing in. The air around Rachel felt thick, suffocating even. The dense forest loomed on all sides, casting shadows that seemed to watch their every move. She couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped, boxed in by more than just trees, but by the truth of Jason's disappearance, and the danger that had followed them here. Marcus's words echoed in her mind, but she couldn't dwell on them. There was no time. There was no room for doubt, no time for second-guessing. The footsteps were getting closer, and Rachel knew that this was it, this was the moment where everything changed. She pulled Liam closer to her, his tiny body trembling against hers. His small hand gripped hers like a vice, but even his innocent eyes could see the fear in hers. "Mom, I'm scared," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of his heartbeat. Rachel tried to reassure him, but the truth was, she was scared too. More than she had ever been. And she wasn't sure if she could keep him safe anymore. "Rachel," Marcus said again, his voice low and steady, but there was something in his tone that made her blood run cold. "You can't run from this. You have no idea what's coming for you." Rachel's mind raced. She knew she had to get out, get away from the cabin, away from Marcus and whatever else was waiting for them in the darkness. But how? There was no easy escape route. The forest was too dense, the path too treacherous. And then it hit her. There was one way out, the old trail that ran through the back of the property, leading to the highway. She hadn't used it in years, but it was still there. If they could make it to the highway, they might be able to get help. But they had to move fast. She grabbed Liam's hand and pulled him toward the back of the cabin. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and moss, and every step she took felt like it was taking them deeper into danger. "We're going to make it out, okay?" Rachel said, her voice more for herself than for Liam. She had to believe it. She couldn't let herself fall apart now. Liam didn't respond, but he followed her obediently, his eyes wide and trusting. The trail was overgrown, the bushes scratching at Rachel's legs as they stumbled forward, but she kept moving, never pausing. Every noise, every rustle in the trees, made her jump. The forest seemed alive with threats, and she could feel the weight of it pressing down on them. Rachel's mind raced as she fought to keep her breathing steady. Jason's disappearance was no accident, Marcus had said. What did that mean? What was this network he kept mentioning? What had Jason been involved in? And why was Marcus so insistent on keeping her and Liam in the dark? But there was no time for answers now. There was only the need to escape. Behind them, she heard it, the sound of boots crunching on the forest floor. Someone was following them. Someone was coming for them. "Mom, I hear something," Liam whispered, his voice tight with fear. Rachel swallowed hard, her eyes scanning the darkness. She couldn't see anything yet, but she knew they weren't alone. "Stay close, sweetie," she whispered back, her voice low. "Just keep moving." But the sounds were growing louder. Someone was getting closer, and they weren't trying to hide. They were hunting them. The path seemed endless, but Rachel pushed forward, her legs burning with every step. The forest around them seemed to blur, the trees flashing by as they moved faster and faster. They needed to make it to the highway. They couldn't stop now. Then, up ahead, Rachel saw it, the clearing. The edge of the forest. Beyond that, the highway. And beyond that, a world that felt safe, if only for a moment. But just as she thought they might be in the clear, she heard the sound that made her heart skip a beat, the snap of a twig behind them. Rachel's eyes shot to the side, and there he was, Marcus. He was standing in the shadows, his figure barely visible, but his eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Rachel," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "You can't run forever." Rachel's heart raced as she clutched Liam's hand tighter, pulling him closer to her. "Mom," Liam said, his voice a tremor. "Who is that?" Rachel didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth was, she didn't know if she could protect Liam from this anymore. She didn't know if she could protect them both from the nightmare that was closing in on them. "Rachel," Marcus said again, his tone colder this time, more insistent. "I'm here to help you. But you have to trust me. If you run, they'll find you. They'll find both of you. And then it will be too late." Rachel's mind was spinning. She didn't trust Marcus. She couldn't. But what if he was right? What if running only made things worse? Rachel's chest tightened as she faced the harsh truth. There were no good choices. If she kept running, they would be hunted down, cornered. If she trusted Marcus, what would that mean for Liam? Would he be safe? Or would they be walking right into a trap? She had no answers, only questions. But one thing was certain, she couldn't afford to hesitate. Not anymore. "Liam," Rachel said, her voice shaky but firm. "I need you to stay close to me, no matter what happens. We're going to get through this, okay?" Liam nodded, his little face pale but determined. "Okay, Mom." With that, Rachel made a split-second decision. She wasn't going to trust Marcus. Not yet. She had to protect Liam first. She tightened her grip on her son's hand and began running again, pushing through the underbrush, not looking back. But just as they neared the clearing, the sound of footsteps came from all directions. It wasn't just Marcus anymore. There were others. More of them. And they were closing in fast. Rachel's heart raced as she looked around desperately. They were surrounded. There was nowhere to go. No more hiding. No more running. In that split second, Rachel made the only choice she could. She turned to the side, pulling Liam with her into a narrow ravine that led deeper into the woods. They would have to go off the path. They would have to risk getting lost, but it was the only way they might be able to escape the encroaching danger. "Hold on tight, sweetie," Rachel whispered as they climbed down the rocky, uneven terrain. The sound of footsteps above them grew fainter, but she knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Rachel didn't know how long they ran, how many twists and turns they made, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Not while Marcus, and the others, were out there. She couldn't stop until she knew they were safe. Eventually, they reached a clearing again, but this one was different. The trees here were sparse, and the sky above was clearer, the stars shining down like distant watchful eyes. Rachel stopped, breathing heavily, her legs aching, and she looked around, her mind racing. They had to be close. The highway had to be just beyond the trees. But as Rachel took a step forward, a sudden crash sounded behind them. And then, a voice. Not Marcus's. Someone else's. "Don't move." The voice behind them sent a chill down Rachel's spine. It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't anyone she recognized. But the cold, commanding tone of the voice was unmistakable, authoritative, controlled, like someone who was used to getting what they wanted. Rachel froze. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. Liam, sensing his mother's tension, gripped her hand even tighter. His little body trembled, and Rachel could feel his heart racing against her palm. "Don't move," the voice repeated, this time more insistent. "We're not here to hurt you. But you're not going anywhere, not until we have a conversation." Rachel didn't dare look back, but she knew better than to think this was some misunderstanding. They had been running for too long, and whoever was behind them now wasn't here to help. It was the end game. She glanced at Liam, her thoughts racing. There had to be a way out. She couldn't afford to freeze now. "Liam," she whispered, crouching down so her face was level with his. "I need you to listen carefully. We're going to run again. I'm going to count to 3, and when I say go, I need you to run as fast as you can. You trust me, right?" Liam nodded, his eyes wide with fear but full of trust in his mother. "I trust you, Mom." Good, Rachel said softly. I need you to be brave. Her heart pounded in her chest as she prepared for what came next. She wasn't going to let them take her or Liam. Not without a fight. Rachel rose back to her full height, her legs stiff with exhaustion, but her determination fueled her forward. She had no idea who these people were, but they weren't going to control her anymore. We don't want any trouble, she said, her voice steady, but her insides were in turmoil. Just let us go. We'll leave. We don't have to be involved in whatever you're doing. The voice on the other end chuckled, low and humorless. It's too late for that. You're already involved, Rachel. You've been involved for much longer than you think. Rachel's blood ran cold as the voice spoke her name so easily, so intimately. How did they know her? How did they know her name? Before she could ask, the figure emerged from the darkness. He stepped into the clearing, and Rachel's breath caught as she saw him for the first time. It was a man, tall, with a broad build. His face was obscured by the shadow of a hood, but his stance was aggressive, like he had all the power in the world. He had a gun strapped to his waist, his movements calm but calculated. There was no doubt about it, this was someone dangerous. He stopped about 10 feet from Rachel and Liam, his eyes narrowing as he studied them. You've been running from us for days now, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. But this ends tonight. Rachel felt her throat tighten. She wasn't going to let her son get caught in this. She squared her shoulders and stood taller, trying to make herself appear more confident than she felt. Who are you? She demanded. What do you want? The man chuckled again, a cold, unsettling sound. We're the ones who've been keeping an eye on you. You've been on our radar for a long time, Rachel. Why? She asked, her voice trembling despite her efforts to keep it steady. What have we done? You've been playing in dangerous waters, Rachel. The man you loved, Jason, he's the key to everything. And you've been unwittingly carrying the burden ever since he disappeared. Her stomach dropped. Jason? Rachel whispered, the name feeling like a punch to her gut. What does Jason have to do with this? The man took a slow step forward, his gaze piercing. Jason was involved with an organization that we've been tracking for years. A shadow organization, hidden in plain sight. And you've been carrying the weight of his actions ever since he left. Rachel's mind spun. This was too much to process. Jason had been involved in something dangerous, but she hadn't known the extent of it. How could she have? How had she not seen it? Why didn't you just come for me sooner? Rachel demanded, her voice breaking as she tried to hold it together. Why now? Why put us through all of this? The man's lips curled into a cruel smile. Because now you're in the way. You have something we need. Something Jason left behind. And you're going to help us find it. Rachel shook her head, her mind racing. She had no idea what he was talking about. What could she possibly have that they wanted? I don't have anything, she said, her voice desperate. I don't know what you're talking about. You will, the man said, his smile widening. But for now, all we need is your cooperation. You can either give it to us willingly, or we can make this harder on you. It's your choice. Rachel didn't have time to think. The words, make this harder on you, rang in her ears, and she knew the danger was real. They weren't playing games. Behind her, she could feel Liam shifting nervously, sensing the tension in the air. He didn't understand it all, but he understood fear. Rachel glanced around, weighing her options. She didn't have a clear path to escape, and the figure in front of her wasn't going to let them walk away. This was no longer about running. It was about survival. Don't do it, Mom, Liam whispered, his little voice barely audible, but full of fear. Rachel's heart clenched. He was so young, so innocent. This wasn't his fight. It wasn't his burden to bear. But it was her responsibility to protect him. And protect him, she would. "I won't let them hurt you, Liam," she said, her voice steady but filled with raw emotion. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for him. Rachel took a deep breath, stepping forward to face the man. "I don't know what you want, or what Jason was involved in," she said firmly, her eyes locking with his. "But I'll fight you with everything I have. You'll never have him. You'll never have us." The man's expression shifted slightly, his gaze sharpening. "Then I guess we'll do this the hard way." Before Rachel could react, he made a motion, and from the darkness of the trees, two more figures appeared, blocking their way. They were armed, and there was no escape. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest. They were outnumbered, and the odds were quickly turning against them. She had to act, and she had to act fast. Rachel glanced down at Liam, her heart breaking as she saw the fear in his eyes. She knew she had one last option. It was dangerous, it was desperate, but it was their only chance. "Liam, run," she shouted, pushing him toward the trees. "Now." Liam's eyes went wide, but Rachel didn't give him a chance to argue. "Go. I'll be right behind you." But as Liam took off into the trees, Rachel was left standing there, her heart racing. She had just made the hardest choice of her life. She didn't look back as she heard the footsteps following them. There was no turning back now. She could only hope that Liam would make it to safety. Rachel's breath came in short, sharp gasps as she darted through the dense underbrush, her mind racing. Every step she took, every branch she crashed into, only seemed to draw her pursuers closer. She had heard the sounds of footsteps behind her, loud, deliberate, and drawing nearer with every second. The figures were still out there, the men in the woods, the ones who wanted something she didn't even understand yet. But what she did understand was that they wouldn't stop. Not until they had her. Not until they had what they wanted. She didn't know what that was. She didn't know what Jason had gotten into, but she knew it was dangerous, life-threatening, even. And now, she was right in the middle of it. The trees around her blurred as she pushed forward, her eyes scanning the darkness. She could hear Liam's voice calling out from ahead. "Mom! Mom, where are you?" Rachel's heart skipped a beat as she froze in her tracks. He was too far ahead, and she couldn't see him in the dense forest. She cursed under her breath, panic threatening to overwhelm her. "Liam," she called, her voice louder now, desperation creeping in. "Mom," he cried again, a note of fear in his voice. She didn't know if he was still running or if he'd stopped. She had to find him, now. With renewed determination, Rachel pushed forward, stumbling over roots and branches, trying to navigate the endless stretch of trees. Every minute counted. The longer they were apart, the more vulnerable they both became. The silence around her was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of the wind through the leaves. But then, another voice. "Found her." Rachel spun around, her heart hammering in her chest. It was one of them. The figure stepped from the shadows, his face still obscured by the darkness of the trees. But Rachel didn't need to see his face to know he wasn't here to help. His posture was threatening, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. "You're not going anywhere," he said coldly. Rachel's mind raced. She couldn't let this happen. She couldn't let them capture her. Not when she knew Liam was still out there. Without thinking, she turned and ran, faster than she thought was possible. Her legs burned, her chest ached with every breath, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. "Liam," she called again, her voice frantic. "Where are you?" And then, something surprising happened. From the corner of her eye, Rachel saw a movement in the distance. A figure darting through the trees. Not one of the pursuers. No. This was someone else. Someone else who might be able to help. "Liam!" Rachel yelled, her voice hoarse. She sprinted toward the shape, praying that it was him. But as she got closer, the figure turned, revealing a familiar face. It wasn't Liam, but it wasn't an enemy either. It was Marcus. The man who had been chasing them for days. The man who had once been a friend of Jason's, but now seemed like anything but. "Rachel," Marcus said, his voice low but urgent. "You have to come with me. Now. They're getting closer." Rachel didn't stop to think. She didn't have time. She grabbed Marcus's arm, pulling him along as they made their way deeper into the forest, trying to distance themselves from the others. "Where's Liam?" she demanded. "I need to find him." "He's safe," Marcus assured her, though his tone was far from comforting. "But we don't have much time." Rachel felt a sense of unease flood her. She wasn't sure she trusted Marcus, she didn't think she could. But there was no time for hesitation. She had to believe that he was telling the truth, at least for now. As they ran, Marcus began to explain, at least, as much as he could. The situation was much more complicated than Rachel had ever imagined. Jason had gotten himself involved with a group far more dangerous than Rachel had ever realized. They weren't just after Jason's secrets. They were after everything. His research, his discoveries. And Rachel, as Jason's last connection, was the key. She didn't understand it all, but she could feel the weight of the words. Marcus's urgency wasn't exaggerated. This wasn't just about surviving the night, it was about stopping something much bigger. "They're not just after us," Marcus said, his voice grim. "They're after the network, everything Jason was involved in. The technology he uncovered, the people he was working with. And if they get their hands on it." Rachel's heart sank. She'd never known Jason's work was this dangerous, this far-reaching. But if what Marcus was saying was true, they were already too late to stop it. They were just pawns in a much bigger game. Suddenly, Rachel heard it again, the crunch of footsteps. More of them. The ones who had been pursuing them. The clearing they'd just passed was no longer safe. Rachel knew that if they stopped now, they'd be caught. "They're getting closer," Marcus said, his pace quickening. "We need to move faster." Rachel's thoughts were racing. Liam. He was somewhere out there. She had to get to him, had to make sure he was okay. She couldn't lose him. Not like this. Marcus grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. "We're close to the safe house," he said, his voice clipped. "Just a little further." Rachel had no choice but to follow. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed for air, but she couldn't stop. Not now. The forest thinned as they reached the edge of a ridge. Below them, a small cabin nestled in the trees. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice strained. "This is where we regroup. We'll be safe here for now." Rachel didn't hesitate. She took a deep breath, scanning the area for Liam. He had to be nearby. Just as she was about to make her way down the ridge, she heard a faint, familiar voice. "Mom!" Rachel's heart leaped in her chest. She turned, her eyes locking on her son's small figure. He was standing near the base of the ridge, his face streaked with dirt, his eyes wide with fear, but he was alive. He was safe. "Liam!" Rachel cried, relief flooding her body. She ran toward him, pulling him into her arms. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, holding him tight. But the danger wasn't over. The men were still out there, and they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. Rachel looked back at Marcus, her thoughts racing. "We're not safe yet," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to get out of here." Marcus nodded, his expression grim. "I know. But we'll make it. We have to." The chase wasn't over. Not yet. But at least, for the moment, they had each other. And that was all that mattered. Rachel stood on the threshold of the cabin, her hand gripping the doorframe as she looked out into the darkened woods. Liam was safe, at least for the moment, but the reality of their situation was far from comforting. The men who had been chasing them were still out there. Marcus's promise of safety felt thin, fragile. She couldn't afford to believe it until she knew for certain that they were in the clear. "Mom, are we safe now?" Liam asked from behind her, his small voice laced with uncertainty. Rachel turned to face him, her heart aching at the sight of his innocent face. His eyes, still wide with fear, clung to her as though she were his only lifeline. The weight of everything she had endured, everything she had done to protect him, pressed heavily on her chest. For a moment, she wanted to tell him they were safe. She wanted to reassure him, to promise him that everything would be okay. But the truth was, she didn't know if it would be okay. Not yet. "We're safe for now," Rachel said softly, crouching down to meet his gaze. "But we need to stay strong. We have to keep moving forward." Liam nodded, his small hand reaching up to clasp hers. There was a quiet strength in him, a resilience that even Rachel hadn't expected. Despite everything that had happened, despite the fear, he was still here, still fighting alongside her. And that was all that mattered. Marcus came into the cabin, his face grim, the weight of their situation pressing down on him. He moved to the table, pulling a chair out and sitting down heavily. His fingers rubbed his temples, a sign of the tension he was clearly feeling. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low. "The people behind this won't stop until they get what they want." Rachel walked over, her mind racing. "What do they want, Marcus? What is this all about?" Marcus looked up at her, his expression filled with a mixture of frustration and regret. "It's about the technology Jason was working on. The research he uncovered, it was revolutionary. It could change everything. The people chasing you, they want to control it. They want to use it for their own purposes." Rachel's stomach churned. She had known Jason's work was important, but she had never understood the full scope of what he had been involved in. She had never imagined it was dangerous enough to get them both caught in the crossfire. "Jason was involved with a shadow organization," Marcus continued. "A powerful one. And they're willing to do anything to get their hands on the research he left behind. That's where you come in. You're the key, Rachel." Rachel's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. "What do you mean, I'm the key?" "Jason was involved with a shadow organization," Marcus continued. "A powerful one. And they're willing to do anything to get their hands on the research he left behind. That's where you come in. You're the key, Rachel." Rachel's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. "What do you mean, I'm the key?" Marcus paused, looking at her with a level of seriousness that sent a chill down her spine. "Jason hid something critical, before he disappeared. And you've been carrying it all this time. They think you know where it is." Rachel's mind spun. She had no idea what he was talking about. "I don't know anything. Jason never told me." "I know," Marcus interrupted, his voice softer now. "But the people who are after you, they think you do. And they'll stop at nothing to make you tell them." Rachel felt the ground beneath her feet begin to shift. The weight of Marcus's words crashed down on her. Jason's disappearance had never made sense, not fully. Now, with this revelation, everything was starting to fall into place, but in the worst way possible. "I can't believe this," Rachel whispered. "All this time, I thought I was just trying to protect Liam. But now I'm a part of this too." "You've always been a part of it, Rachel," Marcus said, his voice heavy with regret. "Whether you knew it or not. And now, we have to figure out what to do next." Rachel looked down at Liam, who was now sitting on the floor, drawing circles in the dirt with a stick. His innocence was a stark contrast to the chaos swirling around them. He was the only thing that mattered now. His safety, his future, everything else was secondary. "You don't have to get involved in this, Rachel," Marcus said quietly, breaking her from her thoughts. "You can still walk away. Leave. Take Liam, and disappear. The organization won't find you. Not if you leave now. Rachel's heart raced. The option was tempting, so tempting. But could she really walk away from all of this? Could she just leave Jason's legacy behind and run, leaving everything she had fought for in the dust? But then she thought about Liam. The life they could have, far away from all the danger. Could she give him that? Could she give him a chance at a normal life? Rachel took a deep breath, weighing the decision in her mind. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about Liam, and the kind of life she wanted for him. The life they deserved. No, she said firmly, her voice steady. I'm not running anymore. Marcus looked at her, a mix of surprise and admiration in his eyes. Are you sure? Rachel nodded. I have to do what's right. I can't let them use me, or Liam. I won't be part of whatever they want. If I'm going down fighting. For the first time in what felt like ages, Rachel felt a sense of clarity. This was her fight now. Her responsibility. She wasn't just protecting herself anymore, she was protecting her son. And that meant doing whatever it took. Just as Rachel made her decision, the sound of footsteps broke through the tension in the cabin. The door creaked open, and 3 figures stepped inside, men in dark clothing, faces covered. The moment had come. Rachel, the leader said, his voice low and commanding. It's over. We have what we need. Rachel stepped forward, her heart pounding. She wasn't backing down now. No, she said, her voice fierce. It's not over. With a swift motion, she grabbed a nearby chair and swung it at the closest figure. The man staggered back, stunned. It was a small victory, but it was enough to give Rachel the momentum she needed. Liam, she shouted. Run. Without hesitation, Liam bolted toward the back door, Rachel close behind. The men were already regrouping, but Rachel's mind was focused only on one thing, getting Liam to safety. There was no turning back now. This was the fight of her life. As she and Liam burst out into the night, the sound of chasing footsteps filled the air. But Rachel was determined. She wouldn't let them catch her. Not again. Rachel and Liam ran. Through the trees, across the field, they ran. The men behind them were relentless, but Rachel's determination was stronger. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the edge of the property. In the distance, a car was waiting, Marcus was already inside, the engine running. Get in, he shouted. Rachel and Liam dove into the car, and with a screech of tires, they were off. They had escaped, for now. But the fight wasn't over. Not yet. As they sped away into the night, Rachel looked down at her son. He was safe. That was all that mattered. But the road ahead was uncertain. The truth was out there, and the people after them were still lurking in the shadows. The battle wasn't over. And as Rachel glanced back one last time at the cabin disappearing in the rearview mirror, she knew that no matter what came next, she would face it head-on. For Liam. For their future. And for the truth. What's next for Rachel and Liam? Is there a way to truly escape the forces chasing them? Or will they have to face an even greater challenge? Leave a comment below with your thoughts. This story may be over for now, but their journey is just beginning.